And we're live. Hey everyone in the chat. Midnight Mule, Objectives Matt. You were the two that I assumed would be joining me at the start, so thank you so much for tuning in. And we're here for what was meant to be the first ever deadline stream on my channel. I don't think it's going to be that now because we've just had confirmation, or it seems like we've just had confirmation that the Merseyside derby has been postponed. All of the ITK accounts on Twitter and Blue Sky and all of that have seemed to been telling us now that it's officially off. I haven't seen anything from Liverpool or Everton specifically, but usually when FPL Rockstar's tweeting it and Bobby from Everton are tweeting it, it tends to be pretty official. So it looks like the deadline is now going to be at 1:30 p.m. Now, this is for charity, so please do, if you want to, donate or just watch along, because at the end of the day, all of the revenue I make, all of the watch hours I make from this stream will be going to Mind, the mental health charity today, because it's that special first stream I talked about. But 5 hours does seem like a long time, and unfortunately, I've got other life business to be dealing with after the deadline, or after what was meant to be the deadline. So we'll probably now just be going on for as long as you guys are interested to go through all of your team dilemmas. Obviously, loads to talk about now that it looks like that Merseyside derby is now off. So without further ado, let's have a look at my team. And if you've got any questions in the chat, just throw them in and I'll try and get back to you as quickly as possible. So without further ado, here's my team at the moment. It does have Salah captain, so we might need to do something about that pretty quickly, because it does look like now that that game is officially off. I will be every now and then checking up on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, Blue Sky, to look for the actual news. But like I said, it looks pretty certain that that is now off. All of the ITK seem to be saying it, and I would be fairly confident that that's now gone. So if you have Salah, you're probably going to look for another captain. Hopefully you've got a little bit of bench strength as well. I've gotten a little bit lucky because I've got an 8-man attacking unit, and I did have a bit of a benching dilemma. So as you can see, I was toying between the idea of benching Semenyo against Ipswich or Rodgers at home to Southampton. I was going to back the home game with Rodgers. Semenyo now probably comes in because that Salah against Everton just isn't going to happen. So yeah, I'll go back to the chat. I've now moved it. If you were part of the last live stream I did, I've now moved it from my right hand monitor to my central monitor, so I can actually now see you much more easily without actually just checking left and right all the time. So hopefully this will be a bit better. Let me know in the chat as well whether the stream is holding up okay. The wind is terrible here. I live in Newbury in Berkshire, so nowhere near Liverpool, but it's really, really strong. I woke up to fence panels going and chairs flying all over my garden, so had a little bit of a delay getting this started because I was running around the garden trying to sort everything out and make it safe before starting streaming. But fingers crossed nothing like blows into the window whilst we're streaming. It should be okay, and I think that this is about as bad as it's going to get. So without further ado, we'll look at the chat. Here's my team. Let me know if you've got any questions. Do throw them into the chat as well. Midnight Mule has seemingly been in the chat since this time yesterday, or when I first threw up the stream. So massive thank you if you've been watching this entire time just waiting for me to go live. We'll see if that's the case, whether he actually did get any sleep between me throwing this up and going live this morning. Hopefully you did. Objectives, Matt. Yes, the Liverpool game does look like it's now off. I'll go back to Twitter in a moment and check for official news. Adam S says he's in Liverpool in the chat as well. So hi Adam, how's it going? Is it bad in Liverpool right now? Like, it's pretty bad here, and I'm miles away from Liverpool. So let me know what it is actually like in Merseyside right now. And obviously, goes without saying as well, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you're in that area, I hope everything's okay. It is obviously very, very strong winds. It might not be safe. I just don't know. So hopefully it's all good. And the Merseyside derby is off for good reason by the looks of it. So hopefully you're all staying safe. Have a weekend just sat at home, not going out, and just watch the footy that is on. I think that would be my plan anyway. I'm actually going to London for a party tonight, so I need to cross my fingers that the trains are actually running. I don't know whether you follow me on X, Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever. Last week, my train station was literally underwater, so it wouldn't surprise me if that happens yet again. Any questions in the chat? So is this a good week to TC Salah? Yeah, why not? Considering the game's not on, it's probably about as good a TC as I'm going to get this season. Although, do check your vices if you're going to do that. I think Palmer probably is my vice at the moment. It'll be upgraded now. In fact, we can probably do that on stream live and move Salah to the bench, which feels really wrong. Or if you want to do a bit of a jam, you can keep him in your starting 11, switch the captain, because you don't want to take the chance on it going to your vice and then your vice not playing for whatever reason. So you do want to switch your captain. But after that, I think you can probably just leave Salah in the starting 11, have a bit of jam, pretend you didn't even know the Merseyside derby was off, and then bring in someone from your bench automatically. A few of you out there, I imagine, have bought Trent in this week. You got the price rise last night too, so really unfortunate if you did, but let's be honest, he looks like a great option going forward as well. So whilst it's frustrating for this week, next week onwards, it does look much better. A few of you out there probably have Mikalenko as well. I don't think many of you would have been starting him, so I haven't seen too many complaints about that just yet. But generally speaking, you're probably not too worried about it. It was probably going to be a 0-pointer anyway. So in the chat again, really windy and rainy in Liverpool. Hopefully it will calm down later. Yeah, fingers crossed it does. Captaincy, we're going to have to do a poll. As Midnight Mule mentions in the chat, I need to remember how I set that up in a minute. I'm pretty confident on what I'm doing with that, but I'll figure it out in a minute. But yeah, I think Palmer probably for me. I didn't do a team selection video because I'm doing this, only because it's a quick turnaround this week. In any other week, I'll probably do both, but life got really busy yesterday. I had a very busy day at work, so I didn't have a chance to make the team selection video. So I'm kind of going to be running through all of those key points in this video. Not in as sophisticated a way as I normally do. I haven't done all the graphics, but it's all up here anyway. So we'll try and go through all of it in due course. The captaincy matrix is obviously a massive part of that. We remove Salah from that, and it becomes pretty open because Salah was going to be most people's captain. Palmer, Saka, you could look at the Aston Villa boys at home to Southampton as well, of course, although they're in Birmingham. That's not a million miles from Liverpool, so maybe there's a little risk there, although I don't want to spread false information like that. I haven't heard anything about that, so I'm starting Rodgers. If you've got Watkins, that could be interesting. Saka, obviously. You could look at Jackson. Obviously, he's had his rest now. We'll talk about that in a minute. We'll talk about the midweek fixtures during this stream as well, I'm sure. I got really, really unfortunate with the rotation in the midweek fixtures, by the way. I don't know whether you can spot it with my team right now. None of my back three started. And obviously getting Greaves off of the bench didn't get me much either. Lewis Hall got a 1-pointer too, so it was pretty terrible for me. And then Jackson didn't get any minutes whatsoever. I'd sold Isak as part of a -4, so yeah, follow me for great team advice, great transfer advice. But yeah, it's not looking too good at the moment, but I'm thinking this week is hopefully going to be a bit better for me. Now, obviously, I've got that 8th attacker on the bench. I've got Salah, but most people have Salah, and because I've got that 8th attacker coming in, I think it's okay. And then Jackson's had his rest. You'd think that Porro's now had his rest, he'll start. Luke on Twitter is a great Man City expert. He wouldn't like to be called a Man City expert, I'm sure, but he is very good at predicting the lineups, and he's having had a crack this week and seems to think that Lewis is pretty likely to start, although no guarantee there. So hopefully he does. And then Gabriel apparently was training behind closed doors yesterday, not with the group, but privately, which I think is what Arsenal have been doing with a lot of their players, that they're trying to kind of pretend that they're not fit to start the weekend, but actually are. So I think Gabriel's going to be okay, but if not, Lewis Hall or Greaves, both not terrible fixtures this week, can come off my bench. I don't think it's the end of the world. In the chat again, we've got a few other people chatting. So Ferrari 61 in the chat as well. Who to captain out of Cunha, Bowen and Isak? Now that's really, really interesting. On the face of it, I think I'd go Isak, personally. Let me know in the chat if you agree, disagree with what I've just said there, all of you. But I quite like Isak as a differential this week. Brentford concede goals for fun. I haven't got any Brentford players in my 11 at the moment, or in my 15, so we'll have to go to the transfer section to find this. But I just wanted to have a quick look at the XGC across the season so far. 1.69. There you go. You can see it on chat there, on the stream there. 1.69 XGC per 90 is not great. And although they're better at home, I still fancy Newcastle to get a couple of goals there. And if they do, then that could be a really interesting differential captain. And let's be honest, now Salah's out of the way, there are definitely different routes to take with the captaincy this week. Isak could be one of those differential options. I do like it quite a lot. Bowen, I've actually forgotten who Bowen even plays this week, but it's definitely not anyone too difficult. Wolves at home, so that's a good game. That I do quite like that. He should be on penalties, I'm pretty sure. No reason to think why not, although Paquetá could be on penalties, I guess. So I do quite like that. Objectives Matters just mentioned that that's quite a spicy one in the chat. At home as well, so that's interesting in its own right. So Bowen's not a bad shout whatsoever. Cunha away at West Ham. Again, because West Ham have been conceding goals for fun, well, we can have a look at the XGC here as well, because Bowen's played all of the minutes. 1.81, that's even worse than Brentford's. So again, could be a really interesting option. I like all three, honestly, as differentials now that Salah's not part of it. But I think out of the three, I'd probably just about go with Isak, personally. Let me know in the chat if you agree, disagree. So through the chat, the chat's coming along really nicely now, so thank you very much if you're part of it. Just a reminder, by the way, because I haven't really mentioned it so far, this is my first ever kind of deadline stream, where it's not going to be deadline anymore, but my first ever live stream on deadline day, let's call it. And it is for charity because it's my first one, so every penny I make today is going to go to Mind, the mental health charity. So if you would like to donate, then fantastic, you can do so via Super Chat, or if you want to just donate to Mind directly, that's also really appreciated. If you also just want to watch along, absolutely fine. Adverts are running in the background every now and then. Hopefully they're not too annoying. But what that means, if you're watching an advert, that means that I'm getting the revenue from it. And that revenue, every single penny, I'll send out a screenshot afterwards to show how much I made from the stream. It won't be much, but anything I do make will go directly to Mind. So thank you so much if you are watching. I see there are quite a few people in the chat right now. So thank you so much if you're watching. And any questions you've got, feel free to throw them in. And I'll try and stream for as long as possible. Obviously, we won't have the 11 a.m. deadline now, so it won't be really a deadline stream anymore, we think. Obviously, we hope that FPL, the admins, wake up and they move the deadline back because of the postponement. But if that's not postponed, then we'll have to kind of work our way out around all of that. Of course, the game itself will be postponed, but the deadline might not be moved back. You would like to think that they're intelligent enough to push it and move it back to 1:30, at which point we'll probably get early team news on the likes of Lewis at Man City, for instance. So that could be a little bit handy for us. But if you're just joining, I do unfortunately have a haircut at 12:30, so this would have been no problem whatsoever if the deadline was at 11, but given the fact that it'll be pushed back, I might have to stop streaming before we get to 1:30. Considering it's 8:30, 8:45 now, it would have been a Herculean effort to go to 1:30 anyway, and I would have probably need to stop at some point. So we'll go to, well, let's see. We'll go to as long as it requires to answer all of your questions. Obviously, we'll get some news as we go through as well. We'll obviously find out officially that the game is off. And hopefully we'll just have a bit of a laugh, answer all of your questions, and we'll all be better for it, and hopefully make some money along the way for Mind. So yeah, back to the chat. We've had our first super chat of the day from SA, so thank you so much for donating. That is genuinely really appreciated, and yeah, hopefully it makes a bit of difference to Mind as well. So thank you very much for that. He's mentioned, hey mate, just discovered, or they've mentioned, I don't know whether man or woman, hey mate, just discovered your streams and videos. Just wanted to say you're doing a cracking job. Thank you so much. That's really, really kind. Keep it up. Just a question, so hope try and answer this for you. Could you please give me some guidance if KDB will start today? Now, I'm no expert on team leak or team news for Man City. What I would say, I just want to quickly check KDB's minutes in the last match because I know they were good and that might give me pause for thought. 73 minutes, and he's been building them up a little bit over the last few. So obviously he's fit to start, played really well in the last game. I think before I go into predicting whether he'll start today, as a more meta point, my worry would always be with KDB that that the problem will be that in a couple of weeks' time, you just don't know whether he'll start every single week. So he might be okay for Crystal Palace today. But then it's Man United after that. You would think he starts that. But if you look at this little period here, 17, 18, 19, it's 3 games in the matter of 8 days. They've also got to contest with Europe at parts during the season too. And KDB, his legs aren't what they used to be. He does get injuries fairly regularly now. So whilst as a differential, if he starts today, that could be really cracking against Crystal Palace. Long term, at that price, 9.44 is really expensive for someone that I just don't think is going to be consistent enough on the minutes to make it worthwhile. And Adam actually mentioned correctly in the chat, he was struggling with a bit of pain after the match in midweek too. Good spot on that. I would have forgotten that. So KDB could be an issue. I'll go to X and not go on to the For You page because that just seems to be a cesspit these days. But I'll try and find in the chat, I'll try and find on X, Luke Disable. Is it Disable? Yes, there we go. We'll see if he's predicted. Oh, he's done it on Blue Sky. Fair enough, Luke, fair enough. So we'll go to Luke. Here we go. We'll see what he's predicted because he's usually really good on that. He has got KDB to start, but he puts out this whole thread. I would highly recommend you go and check out the whole thread because he's really elaborating every single factor about Man City and like what the different connotations might be, whether different people might be fit, etc, etc. So he's got that KDB may rest for Juventus, but said that Pep doesn't have too many players. When the journal asked about managing him, I'm literally reading this word for word. Hopefully that's helpful. When the journal asked about managing him, he suggests he feels somewhat forced to risk him, particularly as Foden would likely be the replacement and he is out. So it does look likely, I think, that KDB starts. Now, I don't think we can say that for sure, but it does look okay for this week if you want to go there. It is a risk, and every week you're going to be kind of worried about it from here on out. So I don't know if I would be necessarily advising to buy him, but if you've already got him or you really fancy him as a 1 week punt, then this week seems like a pretty decent one to go for. So yeah, fair enough. Hopefully that's answered your question. Obviously no like black and white on this. It's kind of somewhere in between, but I don't mind it as a 1 weeker, but I wouldn't be backing him for long term. Any other questions I may have missed? Yeah, Mick in the chat saying the weather is appalling in Liverpool, dangerous conditions. So yeah, hopefully you're all staying safe if you're in Liverpool at the moment. Objectives Matt interestingly asks what stadiums are well covered so games can go ahead normally, or which ones are open so the wind is helping the ball into the net. Now that's really interesting. I did see on Reddit overnight it was to do with the Merseyside derby and how Salah performs in really tumultuous conditions, which was very, very meta, very interesting. But I would be interested to see whether certain games are more liable to windy conditions because of the dynamic of the stadium. So like maybe down on the south coast, you're looking at like Bournemouth's Vitality Stadium, maybe Brighton as well. London, I think most of the stadiums are pretty well covered. So if you've got a home game in London this weekend, let's have a look at the actual games. That might be helpful. You think that Brentford would probably be okay. Crystal Palace, United is obviously like a bowl, so you're not too worried about that. Fulham has got a couple of open areas, but you think Sunday you're probably okay. So yeah, I think most of them these days with the Premier League stadiums are kind of okay. When you're looking down the leagues, if you're planning on going to maybe a League One, League Two game, then do take precautions, be safe. But I think most of them should go ahead. And we'll probably hear pretty soon if they're not, because when you think about it, a lot of these games, the Southampton have to travel a long way for Villa, Newcastle to Brentford, that's a long travel, Man City to Palace, Forest over to Man United, not too difficult, but it's still not easy to do that trip. So all of these have travelling fans, and so you would think that the sources would have to come up with plans for postponing the match fairly early to give fans fair warning. So you'd like to think that if there were postponements, that we'd get them fairly early on today. Obviously, we already know about the Everton-Liverpool game, so that's to one side. So hopefully that answers your question. He also asks live haircut on stream. So yeah, if you're just joining now, I am going off for a haircut at 12:30. This was meant to be a deadline stream for 11. It's obviously going to get pushed back now, you'd think, to 1:30. I can't go that long, unfortunately, so it won't be my first ever deadline stream, but it is my first ever stream on deadline day. So hopefully that's fine. And like I said, we'll be able to answer all of your questions in the meantime. As I said towards the start, thank you so much if you are watching. I think we're up to like 36, 37 viewers right now concurrently. So thank you so much. That's actually way more than I expected, considering how many other people do live streams. And this is my first one ever. So I really, really appreciate it. That is so helpful to me, and really glad that you're watching along. And as I've said earlier, it all goes to Mind anyway. Any revenue I make goes towards the mental health charity Mind, so thank you so much if you are watching. So SA mentioned that the live score have just reported that the Merseyside derby is off. I'll check that on Twitter in just a moment's time, but it sounds very likely that it is gone now. So you might know more than me. Obviously, I'm streaming to you. You can see what's on my screen at the moment, so I'm not looking at Twitter. Hopefully we'll get official word fairly soon. I'll go check out the relevant sources on the stream in a minute. Fantasy Football Hub have KDB starting, says Midnight Mule. Scout don't think he will start. As I mentioned, Luke is pretty good on it. He thinks he might start, but it is a risk, of course. So hopefully that helps SA out. Tony Harrison in the chat, anyone know if any other FPL games have a chance of being called off this weekend? As far as I know, no, we don't have any news on any other games being called off. I would say the further west the game is played, that may be a little bit more likely. So Aston Villa, perhaps at home to Southampton, maybe in Manchester against Manchester United, obviously against Nottingham Forest. Those might be perhaps a little bit more likely, but we haven't heard anything just yet, and we haven't heard anything that would suggest that they will be postponed, so I think we're okay for now. Obviously, a few of us, not too much Southampton interest, understandably. A few of us will have Rodgers or Watkins. A few of us might have Bruno, Garnacho, Ahmad, Chris Wood in that game in the 5:30 kickoff. We also think that by 5:30 that the wind will have died down a little bit too. So hopefully it's going to be okay. A few other new names in the chat as well. FPL North has joined, so thank you very much for joining. I hope you're well. And also FPL Worm, Chris Hollinsdale as well. Thank you so much for joining. If you're watching along and you're not in the chat, do come and say hi. Ask any questions you've got. If you just want to ask a silly question, whatever you want to do, that's absolutely fine. It all really helps get the stream going. I'll try and play some games or ask some questions in a bit as well, because we'll be going for a little while, so hopefully we'll have a bit of fun along the way. We'll get onto the more serious FPL chat in a minute, by the way, as well. Worm confirms that BBC Merseyside has said that the game is called off. So again, it looks very official now. Chris Hollinsdale's been asking, or been saying rather, I've had a few beers and I want to captain Rodgers. Hopefully, are you in the UK if you've had a few beers at this time? I don't know where you're based. Let me know in the chat where you are based. If you're in the UK, maybe you're on a stag do or something. That would be kind of fun. Don't own Watkins and can't easily get to him. Wants to captain Rodgers. Now, that's really interesting. Other options would be Palmer, Saka, the standard ones. But Rodgers is a differential. Now, very, very interesting on that one. I don't know if I'd quite go all the way to Rodgers. I like Watkins as a differential. The reason I wouldn't go Rodgers is because Emery has mentioned, or maybe dangled the carrot, that is the idea that he might get a rest at some point soon. He's obviously played a lot of minutes, and Emery did mention that Buendia might come in at some point over this period. The other thing that I want to mention here is the data, especially from the XG point of view, 0.23 isn't that great. So I don't know, like, obviously do what you want with your team. Always do that. Please don't let me talk you off of doing something like that. But I don't know if I'd be going there personally. I do quite like having him in my starting 11, and I think it was FPL Villain, who is usually pretty good on the predictions, thinks that Rodgers will start. All of the predictors on Jump the Wave, which is also a very good source for predicted lineups, also all think that Rodgers starts, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him taken off early, especially if Villa are battering us. I'm a Southampton fan, by the way. Hopefully that doesn't get any people leaving the stream. But I do think that Rodgers is a good option. I'm just not sure about captaining him. I think the data's not quite there, and he might get taken off early. So I like Watkins, but Rodgers, not so sure. But yeah, look, don't let me talk you out of it, especially if you've had a few beers. Just seeing that you're based in the US. Don't know what time it is in the US right now, whether you're East or West Coast either, but hopefully you're having a great evening with a few beers. And thank you so much, by the way, for joining my stream, even though it's a Friday night for you and you've had a few drinks. So yeah, thank you so much. That's really kind. Tony Harrison with the donation, so I need to definitely get round to answering that now. Thank you so much, by the way, for donating. That's really kind. Cunha, Solanke, Pedro, Semenyo, Rodgers, bench 1. Wow. Now that is a really tough one. I've got 4 of those 5. Yeah, I think so. I think. What do I think? I had initially benched Rodgers, and then I switched it last night to benching Semenyo. I quite like, now that I'm pretty sure that Rodgers starts based on Villain and based on Jump the Wave, I think I slightly prefer him over Semenyo. Semenyo's great and the data's good, and I would like to start him ideally as well. But when I thought Salah was also starting, I did have that benching dilemma myself, and I was currently benching Semenyo. Now, Solanke does also come into my thinking because, let's face it, the data recently hasn't been great. 0.4, 0.17, 0.0, obviously, in the rest against Fulham. And against Bournemouth, 0.22. So not great. So you could arguably look at benching Solanke, but home fixture, their data's good at home as a team. I just feel like it could punish me if I did that. I think overall I'd maybe just about the fixture's pretty good though for Semenyo. I think I'm going to go with my gut and say Semenyo just about, because he doesn't have, well, he probably doesn't have the penalties now that Kluivert's got the hat-trick of penalties. So he might be off of penalties. He's away from home, and he has been taking some fairly low XG shots recently. It's between Rodgers and Semenyo for me. I think Rodgers, given he's at home and given Southampton have been so poor at the back recently, I think I'd maybe just about go there. But all of those options are good starters, so they could all punish. You could arguably look at benching João Pedro, but I against Leicester, I just don't think so. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question. Really sorry if it's not black and white, but I think maybe just about Semenyo. But Rodgers would be the alternative. I wouldn't bench Cunha, despite how annoying he's been recently. He's on penalties. He's talismanic. Probably the same goes with Pedro. Solanke is maybe an outside shout, but I think I'd just about go with Semenyo at the moment. Okay, so another super chat. Luke says in the chat, also thank you so much for the super chat. That's really helpful. Free hit if you've taken a -8 for Liverpool transfers. So let me know, actually. I'd quite like some more information on those moves, what you've done, and what your team is looking like for this week. It's not easy to put that in the chat, so I understand if that's quite difficult to sort of map out for me. But it's hard to know whether or not free hit is viable without knowing what your team looks like now with the free hit in mind. Now, you've said that you've brought in Liverpool players, but I'd be interested to know what the rest of your 11 looks like, even with those transfers. It does sound like free hit could be a viable opportunity this week, but now that we'll have another double game week later in the season, quite likely it could be slotted into another double game week that already exists. But the free hit could be used at another point. So I'd just like to see what your team is looking like, and if it is looking pretty ropey, considering you've taken the -8 for Liverpool players, then maybe it is viable. But yeah, it's certainly not off the cards, but let me know what your team is looking like. Okay, so we've got a few more questions. I will get back to answering you properly, Luke, if you throw that in the chat, and I won't forget that you donated. So thank you very much for that. FPL North says, glad I didn't go early on Aina to Trent. Yeah, very much so. I think if you did go early, you've gotten really, really unlucky. It's kind of unprecedented. We don't get a lot of postponements due to wind or rain or anything like that these days. So very, very unfortunate. But you have got yourself a good Liverpool asset moving forwards if you have made the move early. Obviously, North did not. So yeah, very, very good on you for not doing that. Chewy in the chat just mentioned he's noticed the Liverpool game has been postponed now. Yes, I think it is official. We can probably go to Liverpool. Let's just have a quick look and see if it is actually. There we go. Wow, 1 minute ago. Great timing. So breaking news. I've broken news on this stream for the first time ever. We have now got an official postponement for Liverpool Everton. So that is now gone. Wow, so I do now need to move my captain over from Salah. If you've gone early on Trent, then really, really unfortunate. But yes, we'll need to make moves. Well, I wouldn't be selling Salah, by the way. That's the first thing I want to say. Do not sell Salah just because of one postponement. Do try and find a way around it without getting rid of him, because the fixtures are absolutely fantastic even after this. Yeah, look at that. It's a sea of green, and even that Spurs away game is not a difficult one for Salah. So do not sell him unless you absolutely have to. But yeah, breaking news, official on my channel for the first ever time. Liverpool Everton is postponed, or Everton Liverpool is postponed rather. Okay, so Worm also asks whether Rodgers is captaincy material. I've kind of gone through that a little bit. I don't hate it as an outside shout, but I probably wouldn't go there myself. My brother is in the chat, Tom, so say hi to my brother. He's doing far better at FPL than me this season, so channel incoming, I'm assuming. Liverpool Everton being called off makes my front seven selection far easier, as it does with me. Was going to bench Rodgers, but he'll now come in for Salah. Palmer captain now, question mark. So it sounds like you've got almost identical decisions to be made as me. So I'll go on to my team selection at the moment, not my points. We don't need to look at that. My team at the moment has Salah starting, obviously captain. I think I can probably still have him in the starting 11, but just for the sake of it, I won't be captaining Semenyo. I probably will be captaining Palmer, although open to discussion in the chat as always, and probably putting Saka as my vice. And that will probably be, we'll save it for now. That will probably be what my team looks like for now. I do like Palmer as a captaincy option, considering the Spurs back line at the moment looks like it will be possibly even Archie Gray starting at centre-back alongside Dragishin, which doesn't look fantastic. Spurs, obviously, the data's not amazing, and Chelsea are looking like a unit right now. So I do like the look of Palmer captain, even if it's away from home. I don't mind Saka either, by the way. Like, you could easily go with Saka, but I do think that Palmer is the option. Now, really interestingly in the chat, Objectives Matt has just mentioned that official FPL, and we'll go to it now, has mentioned that the deadline will stay at 11 a.m. So this will be a deadline stream. Unbelievable. So I am now kind of locked in to streaming until 11. I did promise a deadline stream after all. So 2 hours to go to get your teams locked in. I'm actually really surprised about that. I did say earlier on in the stream that I thought that the deadline would get pushed back to 1:30. But no, they're keeping it at 11 despite the postponement. There you go from Everton. It's postponed as well. Although, okay, so that was 32 minutes ago. Sounds like I didn't really break any news. Liverpool were just late on tweeting. So yeah, game week 15 will go ahead as normal at 11 a.m. deadline. So we do need to get our teams locked. So thank you so much, Objectives Matt. Say thanks to him in the chat as well for mentioning that. We will have a deadline stream after all. And as I mentioned at the top of the stream, as I mentioned a couple of times, every penny I make today goes towards Mind, the mental health charity. So again, because it's a special stream, it's my first deadline stream, every penny I make, whether it's from super chats, so thank you so much if you've donated so far, I really appreciate it. And I see there's a couple more that I need to go through, I will do in a second. All of those go towards Mind, and also any money I make through the ads that run along the stream as well will all get given to Mind. So thank you so much if you're watching. I really appreciate it. So yeah, deadline remains at 11. This will be a deadline stream after all. So Tony says, testing me out on the question he asked earlier. Yeah, you certainly are. That was a really tough one, and one that I was going to have to deal with myself on stream until the Everton-Liverpool game got postponed. So I think I'm probably one of the more fortunate ones here because of that postponement. Now, obviously, I was going to captain Salah. I would have gained something from that, but the benching headache I had was really giving me a lot of grief. So in a way, this is now a lot easier for me because I can just start all of them. And my brother, who is also in the chat, is also going to have the same benefit there. Waylander in the chat, up the Saints. Yes, up the Saints. 5 points all season, cut adrift. We're so bad at the moment, but up the Saints regardless, always. In the chat, I assume you're a Saints fan, by the way. Thank you so much for the super chat. Saka or Palmer captain. I'm probably going to go with Palmer. I do like Saka. Fulham's defensive data is not that bad this season, though. And away from home at the Cottage, I don't know that I've just not got a... I still think he'll do well. Don't get me wrong. I think he will. But Palmer, against that really tested backline for Spurs, that looks... They might have Romero back, but it looks likely that it will be a partnership of maybe Archie Gray, who's obviously very young, doesn't usually play centre-back, alongside Dragashin. That's not looking too great, and Spurs have been very up and down this season. They could pull it out the bag against Chelsea, by the way. I've got 2 starting right now, which isn't maybe ideal, but we saw what they did against City, even with that pretty ropey back line at the time. So yeah, I shouldn't really say ropey back line. Ben Davies started, and one of my best mates actually is really good friends with Ben Davies. So I did text him to say thank you to Davies that day, to basically just say thank you so much for keeping the clean sheet on behalf of Pedro Porro owners, because one of the best moments of the season so far was that 14-point haul against Man City, and the clean sheet was an integral part of that. So yeah, thank you to Ben Davies for that, for his part in it anyway. So yeah, up the Saints, Saka or Palmer captain. Thank you so much for the super chat again. I'm probably going with Palmer based on the backline that Spurs are probably going to put out. That's my logic on it anyway. So Mick saying, great stream, pricey. Thank you so much, by the way. Really appreciate that. Do you think it's worth a hit to bring in Isak for Wood, who is my first sub? Now, Wood has Man United away from home. Do I think it's worth a hit? I suppose the question is, do you think that that is a long-term move, or is it one that you're just hoping pays off in one game week? And I think time and time again, I learn a pretty hard lesson in FPL, which is even a striker with a pretty ropey game week, if you're taking a hit to get rid of them, if you think they start, more often than not, the hit won't pay off in 1 week. But then looking at the fixtures to come, Aston Villa, Brentford, Spurs, none of them are terrible fixtures, but they're not ideal. Whereas you look at Isak, who is in a better team, you'd say, probably, although maybe the league table's not really reflecting that at the moment. But they've got Brentford, who also are, like Nottingham Forest also have, but followed by 2 promoted clubs. I think the hit probably does pay off in the next 3 weeks, not necessarily this week. So most streamers would probably advise you not to take a hit. But I think over the next 3, it probably does pay off. So I can see that working. I would probably say yes. Although you did mention it's for Wood, who is your sub. So the question then becomes, who are you then benching if you do buy Isak forward? So the hit then is more of a question of, are you going to get that 4-point benefit from Isak over who you were going to be starting otherwise? So let me know in the chat who that was going to be, because that might then be more problematic. But on the surface, I really like the transfer. It's just whether or not it's worth the hit this week if you were going to bench Wood anyway. So, Chris Hollinsdale, again in the chat, he's over in the US, so say hi to him. The weird thing about FPL on the West Coast is the Saturday deadlines are 3 or 4 a.m, so it's like the last thing I do before going to bed on a Friday, never awake for the leaks. Yeah, that's got to be really hard. I do have a lot of sympathy for anyone who doesn't live in the UK or in a time zone that is beneficial for FPL deadline leaks or anything like that. It must be really, really difficult. I do remember someone, I think it was in Singapore, certainly that part of the world, won FPL a few seasons back without ever really watching a single game, and obviously not really like plugged into the deadlines or anything like that a few years ago. So it is possible, but it is definitely a disadvantage to not be awake for the leaks, because as much as we hate them, as much as they are annoying, they are helpful to us if you're awake for them, and sometimes I do take that for granted. So yeah, it's tough. So Waylander's real name is Rich, by the way. I'll try and remember that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I've noticed my concurrent viewers has dropped a little bit in the last few minutes. I'm assuming it's 9:13. I assume that's because a load of other big streamers have started. So thank you so much if you are still watching, if you are tuning in. It is all for charity, so I really appreciate it. And honestly, any views I get are massively, massively appreciated. So thank you. Are you able to look at team IDs in Fantasy Football Hub or another tool? I'm not sure. Now, the one I usually look at if it's like a big streamer or a big content creator is FPL Game Week. Is really good. They've got a huge content creator league, and I usually check out the other content creators' teams that way. So FPL Game Week, type it in, and you'll probably find who you're looking for there. If you're in a mini league with them as well, that's another way that you could do it. Pardon me. So Luke mentioned took a -8 for Trent. This is Luke who super chatted earlier, so I do need to get back to that. Want Haaland as a differential captain. I like that a lot, by the way. Took a -8 for Trent. Now that does lend itself to the idea that you might want to free hit. Although what I would say is, if you do free hit, you're going to be back where you started ahead of game week 16 without Trent. I think you can roll your transfer now like you can with the wild card, so that's fine. But you will still only be able to get to Trent by taking another hit, I would assume. So it's not necessarily an obvious move to free hit, but I can see the logic, especially if you don't have Haaland and you want to go with a differential captaincy on him. I do quite like him, and no one's going to have him this week, or very few are going to have him this week. So, yeah, I can see a free hit working. There are some pretty good fixtures for free hits this week as well. So, Aston Villa at home to Southampton, you could back Ollie Watkins. Maybe you don't have him. You've got Brentford at home to Newcastle. Maybe you look at someone like Isak away to Brentford. Could look at even Gordon as well. Haaland, of course, a lot of people have sold him, has a good fixture. You've got Arsenal boys. You could look at doubling up in the attack if you think Fulham score. Ødegaard or Havertz alongside Saka. Bournemouth, you could look at Evan Nilsson. You could look at Kluivert, maybe, perhaps. Brighton, you could, obviously, Welbeck's out. So, João Pedro, if you don't have him at the moment, could be a good option. And, of course, West Ham at home to Wolves, you could look at Bowen as well. So, the free hit could come together to look quite nice. So, I don't hate it by any means. But, yeah, it does depend on what your 11 looks like right now, with that -8 taken into account, of course. Pardon me. So, well done, Pricey, with the breaking news. Yeah, I'm not so sure it was breaking news, but yeah, thank you very much. Trying not to become an ITK account. I don't think I've ever gotten a team leak before in my life, so don't try and send them to me, because I wouldn't know what to even do with them, to be honest. And it does a hell of a lot of poor stuff to your reputation if you break something and then it goes wrong. So I don't really want to be dealing with that mess. Excited for the future Liverpool double game week, says Objectives Matt. Salah TC has got to happen. So if you've got that TC, I do like the look of Salah later on. Ben Crellin, who's really good with that sort of stuff, did mention that it could be fitted into another existing double game week. So we might not get an extra bonus double game week, but it depends on how Liverpool progress in the Carabao Cup, basically. So we'll see when we get to it. But one way or another, we do know now for certain that Salah will have a double game week later on in the season. So that's great. If you've got your TC, which I do, I've just seen, by the way, that the game is now disappearing on the FPL app. It's got the little dash next to it. So if you've got the TC still left to use, which I do, luckily, Salah looks like a great option now. So yeah, fantastic. Chewy mentioned in the chat Jackson captain more than Palmer. I tell you what, I do quite like that. He's not on penalties though. That's the only thing that would annoy me. Like, I just maybe I'm just too data driven these days. Maybe I need to open my mind a little bit, but I do like a penalty taker captain. It's just that extra little feather in their cap, that little extra. And the other thing that I would note is that with Palmer, he's got so many different routes to points. His XA is also good, and because, how do I phrase this? Because his bonus points are so easy to get to now, the BPS is really weighted towards those midfielders that not only get goals, but also create chances as well, get the pass completion in. Palmer is much more likely to get a massive haul, whereas Jackson, the attacking returns are really good, as you can see, 12 already this season, and the XG is much better than Palmer's at 0.59, or I'm pretty sure it is. Hang on, let me just check. Is that Palmer? Wow, it's exactly the same. So actually, that last game against Southampton has really boosted that, because it was a lot lower, but now it's exactly the same. You get that extra point for the goal, you get the clean sheet potential point as well, and you also get the bonus points really weighted towards Palmer. I think I do prefer Palmer over Jackson, but Jackson in his own right, if you forget Palmer exists a little bit, he could outperform Palmer easily in any given game week, of course. So I don't dislike it at all. I'm really happy to own him. And as a differential, I do quite like it. Maybe there's an element of the way the match sets up as well. Spurs playing that high line, Jackson getting in behind with the runs from deep as well could be a really interesting way of playing it. So maybe the matchup is quite good for that as well. So, a few more questions in the chat. I will take a drink of water actually, because I've basically been talking non-stop for like almost an hour now, so I do apologise for that. So, where are we? So, FPL North says, this postponement means Smith Rowe starts for me. What are your thoughts on a -4 to Rodgers? Top of your league. Yeah, I forgot about that, North. Yeah, so FPL North is top of my league at the moment. It does come around. I forgot I've got it on a rotor at the moment, but my league code is on the stream. So do, if you're not already a part of that, do get involved. FPL North is winning it at the moment. So I do need FPL North's team at the moment in the chat. So do need to go and check that out. I wonder, actually, we can probably look at it on live stream, because I've got, where is my, there we go. I'm assuming your real name is Matthew and you've got Skinner's winners, in which case, absolutely incredible. Although you did have a tough week last week. Look at, this is the team winning my mini league at the moment. I've never really looked at this on the stream before. He's got Smith Rowe, so we can answer this question right now with the help of your team up in front of me. Smith Rowe to Rodgers for a -4. Now, looking around, you've got a strong front eight. Jackson to come in, obviously, for this week for Salah. So it's whether or not Smith Rowe does have 2 tough fixtures, arguably 3 tough fixtures in the next 4. You're starting him this week against his old club. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth a -4, you know. Don't know, especially with that Southampton game in game week 17. I think I would probably hold on. No, for free, I would definitely do it for free. I'd definitely do it for free. But for a -4, it's tempting because Rodgers does have good fixtures to come. But because Emery's also mentioned that a rest might be coming at some point, I can see the -4 happening. He might beat him this week, probably will, but then next week maybe Rodgers gets benched all of a sudden and you're like, oh, okay, I'm back where I started. No, I probably wouldn't do it. But you're top of the mini league. You're ranked in the top 10k right now. Absolutely phenomenal. So who am I to tell you what to do, honestly? So you're probably like a good 100 points ahead of me right now. So do what you think is best and let me know, because maybe I should be following your advice, let's be honest. So yeah, I wouldn't go for it personally, but again, do what you feel is best on that one. Back to my team quickly. I got 62 points last week. Not looking great. Obviously, look at that, by the way. I started Gabriel. So none of my back three started, and obviously Jackson didn't start either. I did get Rodgers off the bench though, so that is jammy. Let's be honest, that is jammy. So, missed a few questions, so let's get back to them now. Haaland or Palmer as the best captain, asks Gautam. I hope that I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if not. I think I'd go with Haaland as a differential. I quite like Haaland this week. If you've still got him, the data's still great, and I don't think they're a million miles away from clicking again. They look much better against Nottingham Forest. I think I'd probably go with Haaland as a bit of a differential, but both of them are good. And obviously, I'm very happy to captain Palmer myself. But I think I'd go with Haaland just as that differential. It depends what your rank is a little bit, I suppose. So let me know. And the second question from them is, do you think Digne starts? So we'll go to transfers. I'm not a expert on Villa team news, but we'll go to have a look in on X in a little bit as well, because FPL Villain and Jump the Wave are good predictors for this kind of thing. He has been getting good minutes, but 2 90s in a row, played midweek, and they do have Maatsen. So actually, I'm just going to check Villa's overall squad strength at the moment. Maatsen's fit. They've got Powell, they've got Cash, they've got Konza. I would be a little worried. But let's have a look at FPL Villa and see what he said. He's got Digne at 65%. It's not looking amazing, is it? Jump the Wave as well is good. Let's see if I can find the Villa news. Yeah, so 65% there. Newcastle, Man United, Man City, Liverpool. This is a great account, by the way. You absolutely need to follow it if you're not already. Really, really good. Digne is at 53%, and they weight it by the best predictors are on the left, and then the weakest predictors are to the right. And the top two predictors don't think Digne starts. So with that in mind, I'm going to cautiously say it might be a week where he gets a rest and comes off the bench. So it's a risk, put it this way. It's not looking amazing for a start. Obviously, 53%, 63% with Villain. It's not impossible that he starts. It might be actually slightly more likely than not he does, but it's definitely a risk. So take that as you will. I will cautiously say that maybe this is the week that they would rest him, considering it's Southampton and a fixture that maybe you'd expect them to get past with relative ease. So yeah, maybe he does get benched, but I couldn't say that with any sort of certainty. I'm going on the predictors here. Hopefully that helps. Pardon me. So Midnight Mule at FPL North. I think ESR returning to Arsenal could be a good player to have. Would not take a -4. I kind of agree with that. I think I agree with Midnight Mule on that one. Old Club is not really an objective piece of data that we should look at, but maybe there's an extra bit of motivation to do well. Obviously, Arsenal and Arsenal fans love him, so it's not like a massive rivalry or anything, but you can see him doing quite well in that fixture. Fulham themselves also, by the way, have been fantastic this year, so it's not an easy fixture by any means for Arsenal. So yeah, I can see ESR getting something in that game. Probably wouldn't do a -4. He also, Objectives Matt also asks, I'm not going to do this, so don't get any ideas. How much do we need to donate for you to get a mohawk at the barbers? I'm a bit past those sort of challenges. See if you can think of any other challenges though. Like if we hit a big amount, then maybe I could do something fun. But honestly, any money that we do get, as I mentioned, it goes towards Mind, the mental health charity. It's my first ever deadline stream. If you're new to the chat, by the way, I've mentioned this a couple of times. Any money I get goes to Mind. So any money I get from the super chats as well. So thank you if you've donated to there. Or if you're just watching along, you don't have money to donate to super chats. Obviously, I know not everyone does. That's absolutely fine. If you're just watching, that also helps out because I still get the ad revenue from the stream. So all of that money will also go to Mind as well. So yeah, that's absolutely fine. And thank you so much if you're watching. Not sure about the Mohawk though. I don't think I can do that. I've got a Christmas party to go to tonight and another one next week. And I'm on YouTube all the time, and I think I'd lose viewers very quickly if I rocked up with a Mohawk to the next one. So unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to do that. But thanks for the suggestion. So Mick says thanks Pricey. Isaac would be my transfer next week anyway. If I do it, my first sub then would be Nuri. Wow, okay, so, interesting. So it's basically, do you think Nuri is going to get 4 points, within 4 points of Isaac? That's an interesting one. Nuri's been pretty poor recently. Wolves have been very poor defensively, and Nuri, okay, he can get an attack in return. Obviously, he's got good underlying data for a defender, but I'm still on Aston Villa here, but it is for a defender. Like, it's not box office. I mean, at the end of the day, he's got 38 points in 14 weeks. It's not exactly like mind-blowing, is it? So, yeah. Against West Ham, it's a decent game. I would probably not take the -4 for that. I think. It's tight. I would probably... Basically, I'm going on the amount of times over my FPL career that I've taken a -4 for an upside player for 1 week, and then a player that I never expected to do anything just goes and pulls something out of the bag. And it's not the worst fixture in the world for Nuri. Wolves do need to win that game. I wouldn't be too shocked if he got a return in that game, and then you're kind of kicking yourself. Although, to be fair... strikers who get goals at the moment are very good on the bonus points, so you're not looking at just a 4-point goal. You're looking at maybe an 8 or a 9 pointer off of just a goal with the bonus. So I can absolutely see it paying off, and it probably does pay off over the next few weeks as well. So don't let me put you off of it. I say that a lot, but I would be tempted to just leave it personally, but I do see where the upside is, and I'm quite a cautious manager overall, so take it with a pinch of salt. I think I'd probably leave it. Just myself personally. Tony Harrison really mentions, really appreciate you donating the funds to Mind. Have a lot of issues myself. I hope you're okay, mate. Would encourage anyone here who can afford to donate to do so. Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic, especially at Christmas. I know a lot of people struggle at Christmas. So it would be amazing. If you've got the money to donate, great. If you don't, like I keep saying, if you're just in the chat, if you're just watching along, that is absolutely fine. All of the money goes towards Mind, any ad revenue I get. So if you're getting ads and you're getting annoyed by them, just remember it is going towards a good cause in this instance. So thank you very much if you're bearing with me on those. Paige in the chat, who a few of you might or might not know. Tom, if my brother's still in the chat, will know who Paige is. I do appreciate her being here because she's downstairs right now. She is my fiance, and she's asked bench Salah. Hang on, I need to check this because it's just scrolled through. Bench Salah for the rest of the season, or no steak or beef Wellington for the rest of the season. Now, those of you who know me best know I do love my steak and I love my beef Wellington. I tell you what, if she does beef Wellington for Christmas, I will bench Salah this game week. How about that? She might not know that Salah's game's been called off. Just don't tell her. It's fine. So yeah, I do like my steak. I do like my beef Wellington. So that's quite a tough one, but I don't think I can bench Salah for the rest of the season. I'll lose all credibility if I did that. So yeah, unfortunately, it looks like I'm going without steak or beef Wellington. Okay, so FPL North says I did Mbermo to Gordon. Now Gordon's an interesting one. Great fixtures to come. Been a little bit disappointing recently, but he's a great player. You would think he comes good. Obviously, got the goal in game week 14, got the assist in game week 13. Over the season, not been too great, but actually, I tell you what, I do him a discredit. because the data is much better than I thought it was. 0.6 XGI per 90 is actually really decent. Now that's been boosted. I will say that's been boosted by a couple of penalties already against Man City. I think it was against Fulham. Man City. Was it Man City? There was another one in there. He's had a couple of Man City and Everton. That was it, because he missed a penalty against Everton, scored against Man City. So he won't normally be on penalties because Isak wasn't playing in those games. So the data's a little bit of a false flag almost. It's not quite as good as it looks on paper, but it is still decent. And look, he's a fantastic player. They've got great fixtures now all the way through to February. So I do like him as a differential, 8.4% owned. I really like him, actually. So I do like that move a lot. And going against the grain there, against Mbermo and against probably people who'd be going towards Bowen, I think is really interesting. So Gordon, love it. And there's a reason he's top of my mini league, by the way. FPL North is smashing it. So, yeah, it looks like Gordon's going to be the next player that smashes it, guys. Breaking news right here and now. Objectives Matt is 78th in my league, which is really good as well. I actually don't know how many people are in my league right now, but I would care to wager that 78th is really high as well. So congratulations. Also, Objective Matt, thank you so much for the donation in the chat. That is a massive donation. I think the biggest one we've had so far today. Really appreciate that. And also, just a general note, you watch every single one of my shows, it seems. So thank you so much. I massively appreciate you. When hopefully I get to a few more subscribers down the line, when I do, if I do, I will never ever forget those people who were here with me at the start. So yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. So another couple of questions. Also, by the way, if you do have any questions, do throw them in the chat. We've got just under 90 minutes until the deadline, so we'll answer some more questions. I need to lock in my team at some point as well. I of course haven't done that yet. Juntao in the chat asks, bench one of Aitnuri, Gabriel, Lewis or Van Hecker? That's really interesting. I wouldn't be benching Gabriel. That's straight off the bat. He's just too much of an aerial threat. He's too much of a good player. And if he isn't fit for this match, obviously he's a risk. I'll show you my team, by the way, whilst we do this. He, of course, is a risk. We don't know he's going to start, but he'll either get 0 minutes or 90, you would think. So I'm going to start him knowing that he is a risk and knowing that I can have Lewis Hall coming off my bench if I want to. Argument to say I could have Greaves for the home fixture, but I think Lewis Hall, just for the upside. But benching one of Aitnuri away at West Ham, Gabriel, away at Fulham, wouldn't bench Gabriel, Lewis away at Crystal Palace, or Van Hecker away at Leicester. Interesting. I reckon I would bench Van Hecker away at Leicester. Now, although on paper it looks like the best fixture, and I think it is the best fixture, I do think Leicester score in that game. Now, Ruud van Nistelrooy is an all-out attacking coach. Obviously, they scored, was it 3 in game week 14? 3 against West Ham. I mean, it's only West Ham who have been struggling. But I do think Leicester score in that game. And Van Hecker doesn't have great attacking upside. He could get something from a corner. But I think out of all of those, I would probably bench Van Hecker. Now, Lewis isn't a lock to start. We'll go on to Jump the Wave on this one as well. Because, again, great predictor on this. Has Lewis as 64%, so not a lock. So you could arguably just say, okay, I'm not convinced Lewis starts. I'm much more convinced Van Hecker starts and just play it that way. And I think that would be absolutely fine. But I think overall I just about favour Lewis starting. Based on Luke, who is, I've still got it up here, is a very good Man City predictor. He's got Lewis starting. Again, this isn't a lock by any means. He's put in a lot of caveats here, and it basically goes down to whether Akanji is fit to play or not. If Akanji's not fit to play, then Lewis probably starts because Gvardiol's position moves a little bit and Lewis drops into that sort of holding midfield role. With all of that in mind, I would probably start Lewis and bench Van Hecker, who has low upside. But none of those 4 are bad starters this week. So again, you don't hate starting any of them. Hopefully that answers your question, by the way. Tony Harrison asks, who are your top 3 differentials over the next 6 game weeks as a rough sample? Very interesting questions. Wish I was prepared for that. Let's go on to transfers. Let's have a look. I like Gordon, by the way. Gordon's really interesting at under 10%. I'll lock that one in as a number one. Not necessarily the number one, but a like number one, the first one. Alexander Isak is a good one, but I do also like. I was going to say say Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's not really a differential, but a lot of managers have sold him, and I've got a sneaky suspicion that 20% ownership is mainly managers who may have forgotten about their team earlier on in the season. Might be wrong on that, but can I get away with calling him a differential? Not this week, obviously. He's not got a fixture, but after this, it's a great run, isn't it? like, that is a fantastic run. So if you can afford Trent, if you're counting him as a differential after this game week, I like him. Iwobi, by the way, oh wow, I mean seriously, wow. If you've got Iwobi, please, like, in the chat, let me know if you're one of those with Iwobi. 3.4% ownership, incredible. I think the only reason I can't say that he's a differential I'd recommend over the next 6 game weeks, it's just the fixtures, isn't it? Although after that, if you can bench him in a couple of these, Arsenal and Liverpool in particular, this run is absolutely glorious. You've got all 3 promoted sides in the space of, is it 6-7 game weeks, including West Ham in there, Bournemouth at home. That's a great run, and I do really like that. He's also so versatile that he just never comes out of the side. He plays so many different positions. I really like that. But you would have to find a way to bench him in the next couple of game weeks, because those are pretty tough fixtures. Who else? So I like Ahmad, but not quite yet. I like Cliver a little bit, maybe, although I think that the data in game week 13 is skewing it, so probably wouldn't recommend him. Let me know, by the way, in the chat who your differentials that you like are. Evan Nilsson, I'd probably chuck in there too. 4.4% owned, definitely differential. Great couple of fixtures here, and over the next 6, which I believe was the kind of timeline you were talking about. That's a great run, isn't it? It really is. And he's looking better and better each week at the moment. Really unlucky not to return against Tottenham, by the way. If you've got him, then I think you were unlucky in that match. And looking here, hadn't spotted this one, but in the last 5 game weeks, every single week, he's had an XG of, well, at least 0.47, but very close to over 0.5 in every single week. So he is a striker that now, I would say that he's a lock in their team. He's likely to get a goal every other week. And with those fixtures, I really like it. At just 6.1, I really like it. I could definitely move from Solanke to him in the next couple of game weeks if I wanted to. Well, if I was sick of Solanke for one, and if I wanted to free up some money to maybe upgrade Lewis to someone a bit better. So, like, for example, I need to be careful not to lock this in. If I moved Solanke to Evan Nilsson, who I really like, someone like Lewis could become a Virgil van Dijk, for instance, who is an absolute lock. Not great on the data, but we know he's good from a corner. And after this week, or clearly not doing it this week, by the way, but after this week, some good fixtures in there. I like it. Although I need to be careful because I've got the exact money at the moment, so I can't allow anything to really go wrong there. I'd probably have to move early, which I don't tend to like doing too much. But Evan Nilsson, definitely a differential I like. Ollie Watkins as well, I don't mind. He's on penalties now too. I think the only problem is, whilst the fixtures on the whole are really good, I think he'll get reduced minutes because Duran's a good player and they've got Champions League. They've got a lot of fixtures coming. So I would be worried about the minutes a little bit there. Don't know how many I've mentioned, by the way, now, but hopefully this is helping. Yeah, Gordon, as I mentioned, really like. Damsgaard's kind of picked up out of nowhere. The data recently has not been terrible. 0.34 across the season. Good minutes. Brentford fans are really liking him. The problem is, those fixtures aren't looking great. So, not too hot. Kulusevski's been great. Jorginho's been great. I like Jorginho. I think the minutes are a bit of an issue. But he's had his rest, so you'd think this week he'll be a lock. So I quite like that. But again, like I think the problem with someone like Jorginho and Brighton assets generally, hopefully not including João Pedro, but we'll see, is they've got just so much depth there now that you're just a little bit worried any given game week that they get rotated. By the way, not a differential I'm going to recommend here, but shout out to Ashley Young. Incredible performance this season. 65 points. No, sorry, 50. Sorry, not 65. 57 points this season. Even though in 2 games he's gotten minus points and he's missed another 2 games. That is absolutely incredible, quite frankly. For a 4.6 million, the problem is now the fixtures are just absolutely awful. But up until now has been just phenomenal. So fair play. If you're someone who's gone for someone like Ashley Young, like I've got to tip my hat to you. That is absolutely incredible. Hopefully that answers your question. A few differentials there. A few more questions in the chat as well. So we'll have a look. I have to scroll back up, which is always a good sign. Thoughts around Bruno at the moment? Asks Objectives Matt. So Bruno, I think for the price right now, next 2 fixtures aren't great. I probably wouldn't be buying him. It's more of a question of like if you've already got him. Don't know. I think the problem with Bruno is because of the price point, it's quite tough to have all 3 of those premiums and Bruno without making serious sacrifices elsewhere. So I'd probably tentatively go without him at the moment. But come game week 17, he's going to be an interesting differential, I think. I think with Amorim in the new system, I'm a little bit worried. And they've had Arsenal, so it's been a tough fixture. But I'm a little bit worried about the positions that Bruno's taking up in some of the matches. And I do just wonder if he's going to be slotted in to more of a system and less creative than he was in the past. But I don't think I can really read too much into that just yet because it was Arsenal. And he was very good in the Everton game, despite the low XG. He was looking creative. He was looking good. So he's not a bad asset. It's more about whether he's worth it for the price. And I think for the next 2 game weeks, I'd probably go without and then reassess come game week 17. That would be my assessment of him at the moment. Jocks in the chat, hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Wood to Isak or Watkins? Interesting question that. Watkins this week looks fantastic. Better than Isak, I would say. And the second question there is, would you take a hit to remove Bruno to Semenyo to fund it? Ooh, no, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd do that. The reason for that is I think Semenyo is a good option against Ipswich this week. He's been very frustrating this season. I've held on to him for a long time and I've got almost nothing out of him. In fact, the only thing I did get out of him was all the way back in game week 6 against Southampton because I benched him against Man City, where he got his other goal recently. So he's been very annoying, but the data is still decent across the season. He's averaging an expected goal every 3 game weeks. And Ipswich away from home is a pretty decent fixture. So I'd probably not take a hit there. Maybe what you could look at doing, and again, take it or leave it, maybe you could look at doing Wood to someone like a João Pedro or an Evan Nilsson, perhaps. At that sort of price point, I quite like them, and you might not therefore need to take the hits. I like Isak and Watkins. If I was to pick one of the 2 and you want to go ahead with those moves, again, fair play if you do, I'd probably go with Isak. The reason for that is because Isak's fixtures over the longer term are good, and I think the minutes will be better as well if he stays fit. He's a 90-minute man, and those fixtures are just fantastic. Now, obviously, Watkins this week has a fantastic fixture, but is a bit more expensive, and as we've seen, does get taken off early a little bit more often than we'd like this season with Duran coming off the bench. So out of the 2, I'd probably just about favour Isak, but I do like both of them this game week, and Watkins could absolutely haul and be a good captain shout in game week 14. So how about a goalkeeper ranking from FPL North? Let's have a look at that. Goalkeepers are a tricky one. I did a video in the midweek going through all of the transfers for all of the positions. And goalkeepers was a section I did struggle with. I don't really have many to recommend very highly at the moment. The one player that maybe you look at right now is Sanchez, who got a rest against Southampton, but Maresca did come out after the match and say that Sanchez is number 1. He is their first choice keeper, but he'll probably get another rest at some point, maybe around game week 18, given the quick turnaround. But Chelsea fans aren't too happy with him. Obviously, we know rotation can come, so I don't know if I could highly recommend him. But Verbruggen's got good fixtures at 4.5, but Brighton just seem to find a way to concede pretty much every week. Conceded 3 goals off of 0.66 XGC last week as well against Fulham, and 1.67 across the season. It's not looking great. Honestly, I would say this because I own him, but I think Raya's number 1. The data's looking really good at the moment. Down to just 1 XGC per 90. Have 2 clean sheets in the last 3 game weeks, and really good data in 4 of the last 7 game weeks. Only conceded over 1 XG against Chelsea and West Ham. I think it's Raya for me. Even at that price, it's just a lock. And you're getting really consistent clean sheets. So I do like Raya. I am very interested in Onana in 2 game weeks time as well. I think from there onwards, he looks really good. I do expect Man United to improve defensively. So whilst maybe not this week, I think he comes into the fray pretty soon. Henderson got the clean sheet. Yes, against Ipswich. But those fixtures, I just can't recommend him. Outside of that, who else are you thinking? I honestly, I don't think there's much really to be gained by keepers at the moment. Like, the upside's pretty low. If you've got a 4.5, you're probably just going to hold on to them. You'll get an odd clean sheet here and there. Flecken's been okay. Not many clean sheets, but save points decent. Even in this run, you're expecting save points, and you're not getting the clean sheets anyway, so you might just want to hold on. There's honestly not a lot of promise here. Sells, it's been all right. That's about as much as I can say for him, honestly. 5 clean sheets across the season, but the fixtures aren't great. They're not awful, but they're not great. Yeah, for me, it's Raya top, and then after that, maybe Onana in a couple of weeks. Sanchez comes into it, but you're playing a little bit of a risk there. Flecken, I don't think is an automatic sell either. Torn between starting Fabianski and Sanchez myself. So, yeah, interesting one that. I think I'd probably back Fabianski. I'd probably back Fabianski for the fixture. I honestly don't expect either of them to keep a clean sheet this week. To Wolves at home, because it's a home fixture. West Ham have been pretty decent flat trap bullies as well recently. If you look at the wins that they have gotten, Ipswich at home, they won. Man United at home, Everton at home, didn't lose. At home, they've been a bit better. Against the weaker sides, they've been a bit better. I think I'd back Fabianski personally. I do expect Tottenham to score against Chelsea. So that would be my ranking out of those 2 in particular. Gautam saying that my rank is around 500k, considering captaining Haaland over Palmer. Is it a good idea? Haaland's positioning was very deep, Kane-like in the last match. I'm a bit worried. Yeah, it was deep in the last match. I don't think I'd read too much into one match though. His positioning tends to be really good, and I tried reading into that sort of thing for Solanke a few weeks ago, and whilst it can be annoying, they do still pop up in good areas even in those matches. And Haaland, at the end of the day, let's face it, he is so talismanic to City, and if KDB starts, they'll find him fairly regularly. I think he's still a good shout for a captain. It's 50-50. It's 51-49 for me. I think I'd probably just about go Haaland, over Palmer. But it is close, and I'm personally on Palmer because I don't have Haaland. So both are really good options. I think I'd just favour Haaland for the fixture. Yeah, so Tony says, Evan Nilsson, good differential. Thank you. I completely agree. Problem with Solanke is they play your boys away next game week. Yes, so I probably wouldn't be moving it next week per se. But maybe after that you could look at jumping off, possibly. Good enough fixtures, you have to say, afterwards. But Liverpool at home, 17, might be a good jumping off point, perhaps, and I can make that move there. Good morning from Kentucky. Wow. So, yeah, from Kentucky. Hopefully you're all good. I saw Chris was in the chat from the US as well earlier. I think you're probably on slightly different time zones, depending where you are. So, Gabriel, Aitnuri, Kirkes, and I'm thinking benching Lewis because he's irking me. Yeah, Lewis has been very frustrating. Those clean sheet odds are tempting, though. What do you think? I think out of those... I think I would bench Lewis out of those, though. Would I? Yes, I would. I think I would bench Lewis out of those 4 because he's not guaranteed to start. I think he will start, by the way, for what it's worth, but he's not guaranteed to start. Whereas with the other 3, I would be pretty confident. And there's always the risk on Gabriel, right? So he is a risk to start, but he's either getting 0 or 90. So because of that, I think there's a chance that Lewis just comes off your bench anyway. So this is just a non-issue. But in terms of starting, I think Gabriel, Aït-Nouri, Kerkez I do really like. And because all 3 of those have good fixtures, I think Lewis you can probably just have on your bench because of the starting risk. And that would be my logic there. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But yeah, the clean sheet odds are good, but you also have to weigh in the chance that maybe he doesn't start. And who knows, you might get him off the bench anyway. Okay, so Don't Panic FPL says, how do I deal with the fact that I think Palmer is the best captain, but I also support Spurs? Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a Southampton fan, right? So I deal with this all the time, pretty much every single week. I honestly think that you have to kind of separate FPL from Premier League and the team you support at times, especially if you support a club like mine, because the decisions you make are almost, not always, but quite often going to go against what you're doing logically as a fan. And whilst it is obviously tempting to put all of your eggs into one basket saying, okay, I support Spurs, I want them to do really well, and therefore I'm not going to captain Palmer, or okay, we'll go really extreme and just not even own Palmer. I think that at the end of the season, you kind of forget where the points come from, and you're looking at your rank, you're looking at your mini league, and you're thinking, well, why didn't I win, or where could I have done better? And you'll very quickly forget that you did really well off of a Palmer captain against Spurs, but you won't forget the rank, or you won't forget the mini league victory. So I think personally, it's just something that, like, it is difficult, and it does bother me at times, and maybe it does weigh into my thinking as a Southampton fan, but you do get used to it. I've got no problem captaining Palmer against Southampton last week, for instance, because I thought objectively it's the best fixture for it. So whilst it's tough, I think it's just something that you get, over time you get on board with, and you separate the two. You separate your football brain with your FPL brain a little bit, or at least that's what I've come to learn over many seasons playing and struggling to do so in FPL. But again, I'm a Southampton fan, so it is a bit easier for me because I had to get used to it quicker, because we do get battered a lot at the end of the day. So hopefully that's helpful, and thank you very much for saying great stream. It's been a while since I mentioned this, by the way. This is all for Mind, the mental health charity. So if you wanted to donate, you can do so either by just watching the stream, because all of the revenue I make goes towards Mind, and if you want to super chat and ask a question, or just super chat and donate, then again, all of that will be given to Mind as well. Obviously, it's a great cause. It goes without saying that, especially at this time of year, a lot of people struggle with their mental health, and a lot of people I know as well at this time of year struggle a little bit too. So it does go a long way, and it does really help them. And I do think it's a good charity to do it for, especially as it's my first ever deadline stream. At the end of the day, we thought for a while that it wasn't going to be a deadline stream because of the postponement, but FPL have kept it where it was in the first place at 11 a.m. if you didn't know that already. So yes, where were we, by the way? So great stream, by the way. Thank you so much. Don't panic. That's his name. I'm not telling you to not panic, although that's good advice as well. Please don't panic. It's only a game. Objectives, Matt. Hoping Bruno will be back up the pitch when Mainu returns. Agreed. That would be good. I can see him in the easier fixtures playing a more advanced role in that 2 behind the central striker. So yeah, again, when the fixtures turn, I really like the look of it. I think he will play a bit deeper against Forest and against City, though, personally, especially with Mainu being potentially out. Tony asks, have you planned to jump back onto Haaland at some point? If so, when and who's going out? Now, that's a really interesting question, and one for the chat as well. If you don't have Haaland, and a lot of you don't at the moment, are you planning on bringing him back? And if so, when? and who for as well, by the way. So the first thing I'll say is I have no plans as it stands to get back to Haaland at least until game week 18. So I don't plan on having him for this three: Palace, Man United, Aston Villa. And I think most of us would probably be in agreement there. I think most of us would probably be relatively similar. And the ownership keeps dropping, by the way, under 50% now. So it's becoming more differential. But this run here, Everton, Leicester, West Ham, Brentford, Ipswich, is a great run. So it's going to be really tempting to get back on him. So have I got a plan to get back to him for those fixtures at the moment? This might sound a bit stupid, but no, I don't really. As it stands, I think he'll do really well in that moment, and I'm again very open to changing my mind on that, and I will probably have to revisit that closer to the time, and maybe do several videos on it, umming and ahhing about it, because it's a decision to be made, and I definitely have not made up my mind on it. But as it stands, when you look at the fixtures for the other three premiums during that time, you've got Salah, game week 18 onwards, Leicester, West Ham, Man United, Forest, Brentford, Ipswich. It's a great run. You're not selling Salah. There's just no way. Palmer, it's a sea of green. Fulham, Ipswich, Crystal Palace, Bournemouth, Wolves. So you're not selling Palmer, I don't think. And then Saka, who again, we're getting cheaper here. So like, let's say you sell Saka to get in Haaland, you probably need money elsewhere, because your most expensive striker available is 9 million. So you need at least 6 million to upgrade Watkins, or let's say it's Isak, so 6.5, to upgrade them to Haaland. Saka's only 10.5, and the most you can downgrade him is to a 4.5 million midfielder. So that only frees up 6 million. So you need more than that to get back to Haaland. So it's going to be tough. And again, I'll reiterate, the fixtures for Saka: Ipswich in game week 18, followed by Brentford, Brighton, Spurs, Villa, and Wolves. Again, it's great. They're great fixtures. So I kind of think that you can maybe go without him, as damaging as he can be, and he might be a really good differential at that point. So if you're chasing, take a bet against one of those three midfield premiums and go with Haaland by all means. But if you think those three premiums in the midfield keep doing well around that point, and with those fixtures, there's no reason to think that they shouldn't do well, there's definitely an argument to just hold steady and just play it out with those three. And I think trying to find a way to have all four is going to be pretty difficult. There's just no way with my team value I can get there. I've seen a couple of teams on Twitter, X, whatever, with them all in there, but it's going to be tough. So I think I might be going without him and just finding a really big sofa to hide behind in the meantime. By the way, it's 10 o'clock now, so we've got an hour to go. We're really ramping up now. I need to lock in my team. Let's just quickly revisit that, just to make sure I haven't done anything stupid. That's my team as it stands. I think that's a fairly solid team for this week. Even without Salah, I've got a good front seven. I'm rolling my transfer, I think. I could look at making a defensive move. So let me know in the chat again if you think that might be on the cards. If I was to make a defensive move, it would probably be Lewis that needs to go. But I like the fixture, and I think he starts this week. So based on that, I think I'm going to hold on. But if I was to sell him, it'd be for someone probably a bit cheaper, and it'd probably be for someone like a Kirkez. I like the fixtures, I like the data, and I just like Kirkez as a player. A bit of a Football Manager legend. If you're in the chat and you've played Football Manager, he usually plays pretty well on there. I tend to buy him quite often. So yeah, I quite like him as an option. I think I'm pretty happy with my 11. Let me know if you'd start Hall over Lewis, for instance, or Greaves, maybe. I've got a question in the chat as well from Jordan Hayworth. Why Pedro over Hall? Good question. I think Newcastle concede, so already that damages, based on the fact that they concede most weeks as well. And the data's not amazing. 1.25 is okay, it's not too bad. But I do think Lewis Hall probably concedes away at Brentford. Brentford are good at home. They put up good underlying attacking data at home. So you're probably backing a attacking return for Lewis Hall. And whilst the data from an attacking point of view, it's not bad, 0.16. João Pedro on penalties against a promoted side. He's just so good. I mean, that assist against Fulham as well, absolutely incredible. I do have a soft spot for him, and I think he gets 70-80 minutes in against Leicester. So yeah, I think Pedro is the better bet out of them two. But I don't think Lewis Hall is a bad pick necessarily this week. I just think Pedro is a bit better, especially those penalties as well. Objectives Matt mentions Haaland from 18 is going to be a good buy. I do. Not as in goodbye, I mean a good purchase, good buy. I do agree. I just don't know if I can go there with the 3 premiums, and I like having those 3 premiums in the midfield. I mean, I also, another meta point on that, I think there are enough strikers that are doing well to kind of cover it off a little bit. No one covers Haaland, let's be honest, but there are enough strikers, and I'll go to transfers here. There are enough strikers there that are not quite matching him, but doing well enough. Like Watkins at 6 million less, has got good fixtures. You've got Wissa at almost 9 million less, good enough fixtures over the long term. Okay, that's a lie. They're bad, poor fixtures. I might have misremembered that. Poor fixtures for him. Cunha, good fixtures for the short term. I think Isak as well. Evan Nilsson. There's enough there, and Jackson too as well. Don't forget Jackson. There's enough there for me to think that I can probably get enough out of my forward line even without him. But look, he'll be a great differential if you do go there come game week 18, and I think he will be bought by a lot of people. So yeah, it's something to monitor, and he will be tempting, and I'm not ruling out buying him either, to be very honest. So Tony says, got a feeling Saka outscores Palmer, but it could go really either way. And I completely agree. Saka could outscore Palmer for sure. I think we've kind of had the myth that he doesn't explode. It's been dispelled in the last few game weeks. He absolutely can do. The data is there. He's much more central to goal threat with Ødegaard in the side. And I really like that triple... that trifecta between Saka, Ødegaard and Timber on the right hand side. That is a beautiful bit of build up play, and I really like that over the next period. And I think Saka's going to have a lot of goal threat in this little run here. This game week in particular, in terms of captaincy, he's my vice at the moment. He's not a million miles off of Palmer at all. In fact, very, very close. But the thing that's just pointing me towards Palmer is Fulham's data is pretty good defensively. They've looked impressive as a unit. And Palmer up against what looks like a very depleted Spurs backline, especially those 2 centre-backs. I do fancy him to do pretty well. So I think it's just Palmer for me. But again, go with your gut, because in what is effectively a coin toss here, I can see it honestly going either way. And there are those who will go with Saka, and you could easily end up on the right side of things. I'm quite cautious. I'm quite safe. And my gut is telling me Palmer. Put it that way. My gut is telling me Palmer. Morning all. Life Soccer TV. I'm in the chat. So welcome to the chat if you're new around here. Thank you for subscribing, by the way. I haven't done even one subscribe plug. I don't know what my subscriber number is at the moment. It was 2,340 going into today. Don't know what it is now. I will check it live now. We'll see. Oh, okay. So we're over 2,350. So 10 new subscribers. That's great. If you haven't subscribed and you're watching, I'd really appreciate if you wanted to. And again, as always, if you could leave a like, that would push out the stream further. That would be great. But more importantly, if you wanted to donate, because this is a charity stream at the end of the day, donate to Mind, the mental health charity, that would be really, really appreciated. Of course, just by watching along, you're doing massive favor, because all of the ad revenue from the stream will also go to Mind as well. So thank you very much if you're doing so. So Life Soccer TV asks, does Gabriel play? What's your thoughts? I'm currently starting him, if that helps. I don't have any any news whatsoever. I don't know whether he starts. And I will start checking Twitter in a bit for like team news and team leaks, things like that. This is my first deadline stream, so apologies if I'm a little slow on any bits of leaked information. But I think he probably does start. He was a massive doubt going into the midweek fixture. Apparently, he's been training behind closed doors since then. But it is definitely a doubt. I don't think I could say for sure that he does. But I'm starting him. And I think the good thing about Gabriel is as long as you've got any defender on your bench that you think also does start, you can start Gabriel without too much doubt because he usually either gets 0 or 90. And I don't imagine he'll come off the bench if he is an injury doubt. So I would personally, in your position, start him as long as you've got any sort of bench cover that can come on for him. Obviously, you don't really take a look or take notice of the 45 minutes against West Ham because that was an injury that he got taken off for. I think he does, but it's fairly low risk putting him as a starting player in your team because he'll either start or not play at all. So I've got Lewis Hall that comes off the bench if that's the case. It's not too bad. It's not a dream, but it's not too bad. So hopefully that answers your question. So Adam in the chat, non-FPL, a good question actually. Favorite TV show, and I'll ask that to the chat as well. What is your favorite show at the moment? I'm not watching too many at the moment. The best one I've watched in the last couple of years, I would say, is probably Succession. Loved Succession. I really want to get into Industry, although I haven't watched it yet, but apparently it's very Succession vibes. Any recommendations would be great. But honestly, at the moment, I don't really have much TV time because a bit of a backstory into my life at the moment. I wake up at 5 every weekday. I get on a 6 a.m. train to go to London because I work in London. Go to the gym or run in the morning before working, and obviously work all day in London. Get home at about 7:30 if my train's on time. At which point I have made my graphics. I start making my video either in the morning or in the evening, depending on whether I'm gymming before or after work. And then it's basically bedtime. So I don't really have a lot of TV time at the moment. It's mainly on the weekends, and even then I'm watching football. So yeah, I'm not watching a ton of TV at the moment. I did watch the latest season of House of Dragon. I did watch latest series of Rings of Power. I'm big into Lord of the Rings, so I quite enjoyed that. Let me know what you thought if you watched it in the chat. I saw a lot of hate on it, but yeah, I do try and watch a few different bits and bobs, but been a bit poor on it recently, but just because of the working hours. But yeah, let me know in the chat what you're watching. Silo is highly recommended. Objectives Matt mentions in the chat. Yeah, I massively agree. That does look really good. I want to watch that. Damn, how do you find time to make content? I honestly don't know. I'm very tired all the time. That is the answer. But it is, honestly, it's so worth it. I absolutely love it. I would do it if it was free. I did do it when it was free for last year. I genuinely just love making the content, and it is what it is. Like, I'll take the early starts and the late nights and whatever. I can hardly complain. It's great fun, and I enjoy meeting all of you in the chat as well. So I need to do more live streams because this is some of the most fun I've had whilst making content too. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. It does mean a lot, and it makes it all worth it too. So yeah, perfect. So Salmon Lee as well, who is in the chat in the comments a lot on my channel. So thank you very much for coming along and watching. Rested Jackson as captain. Well, I do quite like it. I did mention earlier on that I prefer Palmer just because of the routes to like points. So he's great on the assist threat. And because he's good creatively as well, he's very good on the bonus points and the bonus point system, which means that if he gets anything, he's very likely to also get bonus points attached. With Jackson, also, if he gets a goal, he's likely to get bonus points too because it favours strikers, but he's not on penalties. And I do just think that Palmer just has one too many routes to points to go against him, for me personally, in that 50-50 call. But with that in mind, I do not dislike him as a captain shout by any means, and I'm very, very happy to own him and have him in my starting 11 this week. Put it that way. Very, very happy. So yeah, not a problem captaining him at all. I wouldn't necessarily go against it, but it's one of those where I think maybe in that match I prefer to go with the more talismanic pick with more routes to points, if that makes sense. And as we discovered earlier on in the chat, in the stream, exactly the same XG per 90 at 0.59 now after that what should have been mega haul against Southampton, 1.83 XG in that match. So very, very good. Okay, so we're now 45, just over 45 minutes before the deadline. So I thought it'd be a good idea maybe to have a look at Twitter, just see what's going on, see if there's any updates, any team news, anything like that. I don't think there's too much going on as it stands. Golden Goal, who's also a great streamer, by the way, do go check him out. Getting a 5th yellow this week, it's definitely going to happen. I can see it happening. We've obviously noted the fact that Everton-Liverpool is off. We broke it live on stream, which is great fun. A little bit of breaking news on the stream always goes a long way. No early team news at the moment that I've seen. We usually see it pretty quickly. By the way, what we should note is because of the Liverpool-Everton postponement, maybe a few people are thinking about selling Saka. I personally wouldn't. I don't think it's worth it. Unless you've got 5 free transfers right now and you can just bring him back in exactly like next week straight away. There's just no way I'm selling him ahead of this fixture run. And it's pretty likely as well that you've got some value tied up in him because you've had him for a few weeks now. So there's just no way I'm getting rid of him. Personally, and there's also just no one anywhere near his price point that competes to his level, so I just don't think it's going to be worth the transfer personally. Okay, so a couple more questions in the chat or comments in the chat. Tim Brown, welcome to the chat, mate, by the way. Thanks for joining. Good morning. Had the transfer, so did Gvardiol for VVD today, but with the Liverpool game off, it massively opens up the TC for when the double game week happens. I completely agree. I was saying this on the stream earlier as well. That is now a really juicy carrot for us with TC left to be captaining Salah with a double game week, who is in the form of his life at the moment. There's a bit of speculation as to when that double game week might be already. The earliest it can be is game week 19, but that looks very unlikely. I've seen a few people mentioning that it could be game week 25, where it would be Wolves and Everton. So Wolves home, Everton away. That is a great double. And by that point as well, we'll probably be hitting other double game weeks too. So we might be in chip season regardless. The important thing to note, though, is that we can't be sure when the double game week is going to happen yet because Liverpool are still in the Carabao Cup. Or like because of the cup runs that are going on anyway. So because of that, we'll only know which double game week they slot into much closer to the time. But game week 25 looks like an early contender. That could be a good one. And we might see later on in the season. Who knows? I mean, I don't know whether there's Champions League around this week, but just imagine if it was game week 28 where it's Everton away and Southampton at home. That'd be incredible. I doubt it will be, well, it can't be game week 30 because it's midweek. Possibly, I mean, game week 33 would be amazing. Leicester away, Everton away, that would be great. But one way or another, we are getting a Salah double game week. And no matter what the fixtures are, that's always going to be really, really tempting. So I like the look of that a lot. I'm glad I held on to my TC for the time being. And fingers crossed, he slots in, or that double game week slots into a week that there are no other double game week fixtures. So it's a brand new double game week rather than an existing one. And what I mean by that is we are expecting a couple of double game weeks anyway, regardless. And if he slots into that, then it removes the power of having held your TC because you could just use your free hit or your bench boost in those weeks anyway. What we're hoping for, if you've got your triple captain still, is the idea that you have a bonus double game week that no one else is going to be able to use their triple captain on that week. And you can still therefore use free hit, bench boost, mystery chip, whatever that is, in the existing double game weeks. Hopefully that makes sense. But either way, really, really good news for those of us who have triple captain still available, and a very juicy carrot to be using it on. Sam and Lee, following you since the Playmaker days. Yeah, oh man, what an app that was. I absolutely loved working for Playmaker, by the way. Really, really enjoyable experience. Neil and Helder and the whole team were incredible to work with. It was such a shame that we just ran out of money, quite frankly. It was just so much fun. Apparently my mic volume's a little bit low, so I'll turn it up a little bit. Hopefully that's okay. It's reading out okay on the stream, but hopefully that's not too bad. Do let me know if there are any stream issues, by the way. But yeah, Playmaker was so much fun. Really gutted that didn't work out. Yeah, so one of the most fun jobs I've ever had, and it was also what got me up and running, making content as well. It was I think there was a chat to be had like halfway through the season, or halfway through pre-season rather, with the Playmaker boys. We need to have a channel, we need to do something with content, and I was like, I'll give it a crack. I've never done it before, but I'll get a microphone, I'll start narrating. I did a couple of videos with Neil, did a couple of like longer shows that we put out, and then Neil got a bit busy, so I started doing it myself, and honestly I just fell in love with it. I loved making the graphics, I loved doing the commentary, I loved giving my opinion and meeting people in the chat and in the comments. And when I had to leave Playmaker, I was like, I really want to carry on doing that, so I made my own channel, and here we are today. So honestly, I don't think I'd be doing this right now if it wasn't for those days at Playmaker. So a massive shout out to Playmaker. Like I said, so much fun, and it's why I'm here now doing this. So yeah, amazing. So yeah, if you were part of Playmaker, yeah, you really helped out along the way. Thank you. So Jordan in the chat asks, why Pedro overhaul? I answered that earlier, you might have missed it, no problem. The reason for that is I do expect Newcastle to concede away at Brentford. Brentford's home attacking data is very good, and Newcastle's away defensive data isn't amazing. So I do expect Lewis Hall to concede, so that's the clean sheet probably gone. And whilst his attacking data is decent, 0.16 XGI per 90 isn't that great, and if you're hoping just for the attacking return, João Pedro's is much better. So I think it's 0.6-ish per 90. Just going to double check that. 0.59 per 90, close enough. And with Leicester away from home, he's on penalties. He's looked incredible recently. That's the reason for me that I'm going with João Pedro over Lewis Hall. But I don't mind Lewis Hall as a pick this week either. So Sam and Lee in the chat also mentions, glad I didn't do Porro to TAA. Yeah, obviously, yeah, very glad on that. Now I think I'll do Greaves to Timber. Yeah, I really like Timber at the moment. He's looking great down that side. Oh, sorry. Objectives Matt did actually mention why Pedro Porro, not João Pedro. That makes more sense, to be honest. So sorry, Jordan. That was a misunderstanding on my end. Good point. Well, I don't know. Was it Pedro Porro or was it João Pedro? Let me know in the chat. If it was João Pedro, I've answered it. If it's Pedro Porro, I'm back in the home fixture, honestly. And the attacking data for Porro is something that, again, I'm just going to back. It is an argument to say that I honestly think both concede anyway. But the home fixture, Spurs can pull something out the bag. Porro, for me, has always served me pretty well, and I started him for that Man City fixture away, and they kept the clean sheet in that. So it's not impossible that they keep a clean sheet again. It is going to be tough, though, against Chelsea, let's be honest. And I've got 4 players in that game. So, yeah, a lot of eggs in that basket. So I could bench him. But I'm backing the home fixture, I'm backing Porro's quality, and I'm also backing the attacking data that Spurs have, that Porro could get involved in something going forward. So that's my reasoning there. Okay, so a few more questions in the chat, and a note from Objectives Matt saying, clubs like Aston Villa and Brentford tweeting that games are confirmed to be going ahead. That's really important, actually. The Aston Villa one in particular was one that I was perhaps a little bit more worried about. We can have a look in the chat as well. So yeah, so Brentford there. Today's match is still scheduled to go ahead as planned, despite the bad weather. We want to advise all supporters to allow extra time for Villa, so that is going to go ahead. So not a problem there. We can maybe relax a little bit when it comes to those sort of problems. But as I mentioned earlier, the deadline is still at 11 a.m. So do get those transfers in. Get your questions in the chat if you've got any, and we'll try and answer them all before we wrap up today's stream. So thank you very much, by the way, Objectives Matt, for mentioning that. Yellow Army in the chat as well. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Hope you're well as well, mate. Reasoning for going Palmer over Saka captain, leaning Saka myself. Look, Saka is not a bad captain this week by any means. Fulham's defensive data has been pretty good this season though, and them at home, I don't mind. So I'll go, let's have a look at Leno's probably played every minute. Let's have a look at Leno. 1.36 XGC per 90 is not bad at all. Sorry, that's XG. 1.15 XGC per 90, very decent, and a good home record to boot as well. I don't think Arsenal will struggle to necessarily get anything, but it might be a tighter game than some are giving credit for. Saka's still great, but I think Palmer up against that defensive line of Tottenham is a high line, as we've seen, and also their centre-back pairing looks like it's going to be Dragishin alongside potentially even Archie Gray. That could be problematic, and I do think that Palmer is going to cash in that fixture. And personally for me, I think that maybe just tips the scale towards Palmer. I do like both, don't get me wrong, but I think Palmer for me is maybe just slightly ahead. But if you've got Haaland, maybe slightly ahead again. So yeah, that's my reasoning. Hopefully that makes sense. So a few other questions in the chat. A Semenyo or a Wobie long term? Now, that's interesting. I think for me it's Semenyo. I still like Semenyo. He's been frustrating recently, but in terms of the underlying attacking data, he is better than a Wobie. And the next few fixtures, so these 6 fixtures are good for Semenyo. There's no questioning that, especially this week. Iwobi is a really good differential, and he's done fantastically recently, but I certainly wouldn't be buying him now ahead of these 2 game weeks. I think it's much better to have that conversation, perhaps in game week 17, ahead of Southampton, and then they've got a great run there. And there is a bit of an overlap in terms of the fixtures, but maybe you could look at doing Semenyo to Iwobi around about game week 19, for instance. So that might not be a bad one. So, what I'll do, actually, I'll take another drink of water because I'm really parched now. Oh, apologies for that. So, Salmon Lee, again in the chat, what do you think of Ahmad as an option? Maybe for Mbermo soon. I do like Ahmad a lot. He's really fitting that system well, and unexpectedly as a bit of a wing back, so I do like him. Obviously got a little bit of a rest against Arsenal, but I think once we get to game week 17 with Man United assets, that's when I'll be talking about them a lot more. Because again, I might want to have a cheapie in midfield. Ahmad could be a really decent option. He looks phenomenal at the moment. Obviously, 4 assists in his last 4 game weeks, 4 assists in 3 up until the Arsenal game. Not great data, it must be said, but on the eye is looking really good, and Man United fans rate him really highly. At 5 million, you're not really looking for like incredible 0.5 XGI per 90, so I do like it. I probably wouldn't go there just yet. I'd maybe be looking around game week 17, but definitely one to look at. As a Southampton fan, do I think Dibbling starts? Yes, I do. I do think Dibbling starts. I'd be pretty surprised, considering he just had the suspension against Chelsea. That's the reason he missed. And he'd been playing 90 minutes in the last 2 game weeks against Liverpool and Brighton. He is our best ball carrier by a long, long way now, and probably our best player, arguably between him and Downs. And I think we're going to need him to even get out of our defensive shape against Aston Villa. Yeah, he's our star boy at the end of the day. He's brilliant. So I think I would be very surprised if he didn't start against Aston Villa, especially considering that he had his rest given the suspension in midweek. Southampton will be stronger today, by the way, as well. I mean, who knows? We might still get battered regardless because we play pretty interesting football at the back. We're never going to stop playing out from the back, but we do have players coming back in. So we've got Harwood Bellis back, we've got Downs back, we've got Dibbling back. We might also have Bednarek back as well. So It's not going to be quite as weaker side as we put out against Chelsea, but Aston Villa players are still obviously very, very good, and Dibbling should come back in to start. I'd be very surprised if he didn't. Hopefully that helps, and yes, I am a Southampton fan. It's not been easy, but we take it. It's fine. FPL Yellow Army mentioned, did I hear Romero was 50-50 for the game, or have I got that wrong? No, you got that right. I also saw that Romero was a doubt, but could make it. But I think given the fact it's quite a big game, and he is a doubt, look, he could start, but even if so, they're missing their other key centre-back anyway. And if he's coming back from an injury after three weeks out, or 3 game weeks out, he might not be fully up to speed anyway, even if he does play. And Chelsea have a lot of very quick players in that press that they've got. So Neto might tear him apart. You've got Jackson, who's very quick, Palmer, who's quick. Like, it's not going to be easy for him to deal with. So I think regardless, whether they go with Romero if he's fit, or Archie Gray if not, or I think Davies is out for quite a while now, or especially for this week, yeah, should be out. It's going to not be their ideal back four or back pairing anyway. So I think it's still a good shout personally. But again, if you disagree, let me know in the chat. Absolutely fine. Just over half an hour to go, by the way, before the deadline on my first ever deadline stream. If you're watching and you've just tuned in, this is all for Mind, the mental health charity. I'm donating every penny I make to Mind. So if you want to donate, if you've got a question and you want to put in a super chat, then that will be greatly appreciated. It won't go to me, it will go to the charity. Again, because it's my first ever deadline stream, I wanted to do something a little bit special, and it's a cause that I know a lot of people really, really need at this time of year as well. So it does mean a lot if you are able to help out. Also, just by watching along, you're also helping as well, because those ads that run in the background do generate money, usually for me, obviously, but all of that money would go to Mind, the mental health charity, this week as well. So really, really helpful if you do just watch along, and I really appreciate it. If you're enjoying the stream as well, I'd massively appreciate it if you could just leave a like, and of course, if you want to subscribe, that would be great too. If you don't want to miss out on any future content, that would be great. I haven't given many plugs in this stream so far, but given we're half an hour out from the deadline, I would love it if you could do either of those things. It would mean a lot to me. Couple of questions in the chat. Will you captain Haaland if you still have him, or Palmer for safety? I mentioned this earlier on. It's a real coin toss. I think I'd probably go with Haaland personally. I do like Palmer a lot as a captaincy option this week. Probably almost very level pegging with Haaland, but I've just got a sneaky suspicion that Haaland gets back to where we know he can do against Crystal Palace. City looked a bit stronger against Nottingham Forest. The data is still very good, 0.87 xg per 90. I've got a feeling that he comes good against Palace, but if you want to go safe, then Palmer, there is safety in numbers. I think I would just back Haaland, but it is a bit of a differential shout at this point, considering his ownership has dropped. So if you don't want to take the risk, then Palmer is very good too. And of course will be my captain as well. Okay, so in the chat, we've also had Mbermo and Raul out for a -4. Was planning on saving, but the Liverpool match is off and bench is bad. Makes me want to take the hit. I think it depends how bad your bench is. Are they starting players? Are they players that you could rely on for 1 week? If not, then I think the hit for Raul and Mbermo out could make sense. But you could just play both of them, honestly. I don't think it's the end of the world to play them. Raul has had his rest in midweek, I believe. Just going to double check that, but I'm pretty certain Muniz started and there's no injury issue there. Yeah, he came off the bench. So I think Raul will probably start. And you never know, quite frankly. You never know. He might get something. And then Mbermo on penalties. Look, it's not the greatest game in the world, but against Newcastle at home, I would back him to do something. I would think that maybe they'll go back to a 3-5-2. He'll play more centrally, perhaps. I think if those are the players that you're looking to remove for a hit, it would be more of a question of who you're bringing in for that hit and whether they're long-term picks or just like 1 weekers that have a good fixture this week. But generally speaking, I think if you can survive without taking the hit, and maybe just bench your Liverpool assets, I'm assuming Salah, then you'll probably be okay. Adam S in the chat as well. How did you finish in your first FPL season? My first season was so long ago now. I can't remember. I can get on my rank history in a minute. It's my first one at the moment at 1 million so far, just aiming for top 3 million at the end of the season. You can definitely do that. I would back you 100% of the way. I reckon at 1 million right now, 100k is well within your reach. Make sensible moves. Watch content, not necessarily mine, but watch content and stay. The most important thing that I tell all my mates as well who drop off is if you stay engaged and you make fairly logical moves most weeks and stay up to date with the double game weeks, the blank game weeks through the season and play your chips at good times, you're going to have a pretty decent season. So just stay in it, stay in the mix, keep plugged into the FPL content and the stream of content that goes out week on week, and you will get there. 3 million, no problem at all. You'll definitely get 3 million. I reckon you can get beyond 1 million as well. So I can't remember what I got in my first ever season. Let's have a look actually. My first season was 300k, and then it was 150k, 200k, 45k. All right. And that, to be honest, I only started really taking it seriously around COVID anyway, so not too bad. And you can definitely emulate that as well. 300k, not a problem. You can definitely get there. If you're at 1 million right now, not a problem whatsoever. Okay, so Objectives Matt asks, got 0.8 in the bank and a similar bench a similar bench to you with Hull and Ipswich defender. Could it be worth upgrading the Ipswich defender for a stronger bench? It could be. I don't know which Ipswich defender you've got. I've got Greaves, but I don't think it really makes much difference. You might have. I mean, if it's Davis, then maybe it's a little bit better. But outside of that, probably not that great. If you've got 0.8 in the bank, I guess it depends what else you're looking at potentially spending that money on in the next few weeks. Try and plan ahead. See if that goes anywhere else. But I think generally speaking, it's not a bad move if you can do it for free. But if he's on your bench at the moment, I would maybe just roll the transfer. Yeah, I'd probably roll the transfer now, personally. I don't think you need to force it. We saw your... I think we've looked at your team a little bit already, or talked about your team a little bit already. It sounds like you've got a good starting 11. I think you can probably survive and roll it, and you can always make the transfer next week, potentially. Dan in the chat as well. Hey, Dan, how's it going? My manager for one of the little mini leagues that we have in FPL is in the chat. Thank you so much for joining, mate. Really appreciate it. And thanks for all your sharing as well before the stream. I really, again, massively appreciate it. And I know you've had a busy morning this morning. So cheers for tuning in again. Really, really helpful. So thank you. Razor in the chat asks, hello, what are your plans for Solanke? I'm assuming you'll keep him until after Southampton. Also, do you think selling Mbermo for Iwobi after game week 17 is worth it? Two really good questions there. Or three, I guess. My plans for Solanke are precisely that, actually, to hold on to him until after the Southampton game at the least. And then after that, I will make a decision. I will probably get rid of him, I think, after for game week 17 beyond. Maybe for Evan Nilsson. I quite like Evan Nilsson at the moment, but that's not really locked in just yet. I could arguably hold on to him if I had to and I had other problems, but my plan at the moment is by game week 17 he could be someone I look to move on and maybe maneuver money elsewhere. So again, I mentioned it earlier on in the stream. I might be looking at perhaps moving Solanke down and then Lewis in my backline up to someone like a Virgil van Dijk, for instance. Quite like the look of that. Do I think Mbermo for Iwobi is worth doing after game week 17? Now, I need to remind myself of where the fixtures do swing for Fulham. Because I know it is game week 17, perfect. In that case, I do quite like it. Iwobi's been really quite brilliant this season. Returned in all of the last 4 game weeks. The data's not terrible. And Burmo's never a bad option, though. He is still the 4th highest scoring midfielder. The fixtures aren't great, especially this little period here. So I can see why you would sell him. And I would probably do the same, to be fair. Iwobi would maybe be one of the top of the list at that point in time, but you could look at maybe a differential. One player that I do have in mind around game week 17 is Bruno. Maybe Rashford if he keeps starting up top. But Bruno, with this fixture run coming in at game week 17 as well, could be a good jumping off point for Mbermo. So keep that one in mind. But if not, I do quite like Iwobi with the switch in fixtures. Possibility of other games being postponed, asks Salmon Lee. We have been looking on Twitter here and there. I will kind of be on Twitter a little bit more now as well, just to see for team news, things like that. But it looks like, based on, I think Villa mentioned it's still on. Brentford also mentioned it's still on. I think we're okay on most of them. So hopefully not too much of a problem. It's just that Liverpool-Everton game. As we can see, top of the chat here, it's been postponed. So I think that's the only one so far. Although Mode says absolute chaos this week. So don't know what that means. We'll have to check it out. Palmer captain it is. Nothing. I don't. Let me know in the chat, by the way, if you've seen any early team news that I'm not privy to. I'm not seeing anything. It looks like Let's Talk's not streaming, which might help my views a little bit. If you want to come and watch me instead, that's great. Lots of people asking for the deadline to be moved. It's not too much going on in terms of news that I'm seeing. Yeah, I think we're okay on news so far. Let me know in the chat if you've spotted anything. But as far as I'm aware, it's all good. I don't know what all this chaos is. So yeah, fingers crossed, we're all good. Right, so hopefully that answers your question, Salmon Lee. The next question in the chat, let me scroll, is current season's a nightmare. 3.6 million right now, been top 100k past 5 out of 6 seasons. Best placement was 4k last season. That's incredible. Well done. And honestly, this season has been, I would say, the most challenging I've ever seen. I would say that because I'm 1.6 at the moment. I'm not having a great one. And actually, I think this is probably the lowest I've been at this point in any season since I started taking it seriously. So it has been a real struggle, and it feels like we just keep getting like beaten up week on week. And every move I'm making seems to go wrong. But don't lose faith yet. We've got so much of the season to come. We've got more than what we've already had. And we've still got chip season. We've got double game weeks. We've got blank game weeks. We've got chaos happening every single week. So all of the advantages that the managers that are 100 points ahead of you have had so far, you will also have the opportunity to tap into later on in the season. So don't worry just yet, and just think about it this way. If you are able to get your season back on track from, let's say, 3.6 million, like you're saying at the moment, the comeback story is going to be immense, and you're going to have so much fun doing it. And just set yourself little challenges, like, can I be 2 million by Christmas? Can I be 1 million by game week 22 or whatever? And that's the sort of thing that I'm going to set myself. Like, can I be top million by Christmas? Can I be top 500k by game week 25 or something like that? And then just build it up, and then hopefully start making incremental gains. And by the end of the season, fingers crossed, we've got a sea of greens, and you've got a bit of a comeback story, and everyone's praising you for the comeback story. How on earth did you manage it? And you're only going to be able to do that if you keep going. So always just persevere. It's a game at the end of the day. If it's obviously like making you pretty upset, then you can stop. No question on it. But it is a game. I do get frustrated at times, but I try to take a step back every now and then and just say, you know what? If I finish at 1 million rank this year, then it is what it is. No one's going to get hurt in doing so. So I can just go again next year, and it's fine. It's all good fun. And as long as we can take it with a pinch of salt and have a bit of a laugh about it, I think that's absolutely fine. And like Objectives Matt's just mentioned in the chat, the ranks do feel pretty close together at the moment, and I don't think it will take a lot for you to be 1 million or 2 million within a couple of game weeks if you have a good couple of weeks. Elliot in the chat asks, Aina to Timber or Roll. How many transfers do you have at the moment? I would be interested to see that. I would also say that on the surface, I really like that transfer. I like Timber a lot. Down that right wing, he's looked fantastic recently. And that little kind of triple up down the right wing of Saka, Erdegaard and Timber looks really strong. So I like Timber. Fixtures are great. White's out for a little while now. So yeah, I really like it. Depends how many transfers you've got and what your team would be without making the move. But yeah, on the surface, I like that a lot, objectively. In the chat as well, should I do Mbermo to Bowen or Mbermo to Mitoma and Archer to Evan Nilsson? I think the question is, are you starting Archer? If you're starting Archer, I would do... Actually, you know what? I'd probably do number 2 anyway. I'd do number 2 regardless, as long as it's not for a hit. I would do that anyway. I like Mitoma a lot. Data's good. He's pretty locked into that Brighton side, you'd think. Although, you know, Hertzler does rotate. And Evan Nilsson is one of my favourite differentials at the moment. So I go with option B on that one, just very marginally. As long as it's not for a hit. That's it. Razor, in the chat saying, thanks for the insight. I have the same problem with Solanke, but I'm planning to upgrade him to Isak after game week 17. Good shout. I like that a lot. So I have to downgrade Mbermo. Also, Saka versus Palmer cap. I'm on Palmer. We've gone through it a few times, but yeah, just marginally prefer Palmer, I think. In terms of Solanke to Isak, I really like that as a move. Come around game week 17. I really, really miss Isak already. I sold him for Jackson last week for a hit as well. Did not go well. Very, very frustrating. But fingers crossed it comes good this week. So would have to downgrade Mbermo. Yeah, fair play. In that case, Iwobi does make sense in your situation. Hugo Buendia, great name, I love that name, in the chat saying Mazraoui, Aitnuri or Porro to start. I think I would probably, although I'm starting Porro in my side, so I do like him, but given the fixtures for the other two, I would probably start the other two ahead. And I don't have the other two either, so that's worth noting. I'd probably start Mazraoui and Aitnuri ahead of Porro. If it was one of them, probably Mazraoui. Probably. Again, very, very slightly there. But none of the three I absolutely hate. What else in the chat? So ranks do feel pretty close at the moment. Carrie says, hi Sam, who would you prioritise on bench, Robinson or Greaves? I'd prioritise Robinson in terms of like, if you're asking like which one in terms of like first bench, second bench, I'd put Robinson first. Even though it's a tougher fixture, Robinson and the team are just a better... Robinson's a much better player. He's got attacking upside and they're a much, much better team than Ipswich are. So that's the way I'd play it. I'd always back team quality at the end of the day. And I do think that even though Ipswich have the better fixture, I still think they concede against Bournemouth. So I don't think there's tons of upside there for Greaves. So hopefully that answers your question. Mohammed in the chat, Mbermo to Semenyo or Roll. I'd probably... I would... Would I do that? I don't hate Semenyo. Sorry, I don't hate Mbermo this week. He's still on penalties. It's a tight one. It's a tight one. I think, you know what? No, I think I would do it because Semenyo over the next few game weeks looks like a better bet and you save money. And I'm assuming you're going to be able to use that money elsewhere in a couple of weeks' time as well. So very, very slightly, yes, I would just about do that. Okay, cool. So Ferrari in the chat, if you have to captain one of Fernandez or Bowen, who would I captain? Fernandez. Better, slightly better data, I think. Slightly better team as well. And although the fixture's not, I wouldn't say the fixture's better, I think the player and the data kind of makes up for it. I would maybe just about go Fernandez. But it's pretty tight. Bro is, Nearman in the chat asks, bro, is Gabriel starting? Sorry if you answered, just join. Not a problem at all. Always feel free to ask. I don't have any news on Gabriel starting. Let's check Twitter again very quickly to see if there's any like last minute things going on. Doesn't look like it. Blue Sky as well. I'm on Blue Sky too. If you want to go and follow me on either of those. Not really seeing too much going on. Nothing. So I don't have any news on Gabriel, unfortunately. For me, I'm starting him in my team, and I'll go back to my team now because we're only 15 minutes away from deadline, just under 15 minutes actually, so we do need to take that into account. God, this stream has gone quickly, over 2 hours already. Wow. So thank you if you've been watching. We don't have any news. I'm starting Gabriel. He's got, I mean, it's 75% here. We know that he's been in training behind closed doors, so he's close. We know that if he is anywhere near fit, he should start. But we also know that if he's not fit, he won't get any minutes, or he's very unlikely to get any minutes. So I would be starting him in your FPL team, even if he's a doubt, as long as you've got someone first on the bench to come in if he doesn't get any minutes. That's what I'm doing anyway. So I've got Gabriel. I think he'll either get 90 or 0. So I'm playing him. And if he gets 0, I've got Lewis Hall coming off my bench. Hopefully that's helpful. I don't have any news though, unfortunately. I'm not an ITK. I don't get team news, unfortunately. Penguino in the chat says, hi mate, play 3 out of Hall, Colwill, Gabriel, Aitnuri, Lewis. Oh, okay, tough one. So I would play Gabriel. I would play... Colwill's got very low upside. And I think they concede to Tottenham. So I'd bench him. And I would probably bench Lewis Hall, because I'm benching Lewis Hall as well. And I think I think Rico Lewis starts. I don't have any news on that, but a lot of the predictors, and especially Luke, who is a good predictor, thinks that Akanji is a doubt, and therefore Lewis is more likely to start. That's why I'm starting Lewis in my team over Lewis Hall. And it's just a better fixture as well. So that's where I would have it. I'd be starting Gabriel, Lewis, and who was the other one? Aitnuri in your side. Hopefully that helps. Would you start Flecken or Fabianski? I think I would start... I'd start Fabianski out of the two. I think Newcastle score. I think Flecken gets some saves, but if you're looking to try and punt on that chance of a clean sheet, I think Fabianski has a marginally better chance of a clean sheet. Sorry if I'm answering these a little quicker, by the way. We've 10 minutes to go, so I'm trying to rattle through them a little bit more. Again, by the way, before we answer the last few questions and start locking in our teams, this is a charity stream, so thank you so much if you've donated via Super Chat already. It's all going to Mind. It's my first ever deadline stream, so massive thank you for coming and joining the fun. I've really enjoyed it so far. Probably going for another 10 to 15 minutes. We'll lock in and then have 5 minutes to say goodbye after the deadline. But thank you so much if you've been watching. It's gone by so quickly. I'm really thoroughly enjoyed it, so thank you. If you want to donate via Super Chat in the last 5 minutes or so, please, that would be amazing. If you can't do so, that's also fine. Just keep watching, and all of the ad revenue that I make from this video also goes to Mind as well. So again, massive thank you for that. As always, last quick shout before we lock in our teams. If you're not subscribed, please do consider doing so. I would really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. And if you could like the stream as well, that'd be great too. So yeah, just quick last push before we start locking in our sides and answering the last few questions. Razor says, I'm starting Flecken because I have the Wolves forward. Yeah, fair enough. If you don't want to have like if you don't want to hedge your bets, I suppose. There are two ways of looking at it. If you wanted to hedge your bets, then you could start both, but the upside is lower. But you're kind of throwing all of your chips into one scenario there, which I do quite like, which is, of course, that Wolves will score. And I think that's reasonable, especially if you've got Strand Larsen or you've got Cunha. You would probably hope that they do score in that match, and therefore Flecken is probably the better bet to start in goal. PLK asks, morning, would you consider Mbermo to Bowen and Wisser to Jackson for free? I think I would. I like Jackson this week. He's had his rest. Good. One quick point to mention on that is as long as you've got 8 strong attackers if you make those moves, because Jackson is very likely to get that 5th yellow card at some point fairly soon. So just want to note, but on the surface, yes, I do like both of those moves. and I think it probably does pay off. So yeah, I probably would do that. Hopefully that helps. No further questions in the chat as it stands, so do get them in if you want to. I'm now pretty locked in on my team. I'm just going to reload the page to make sure that it's saved. I'm a little bit overly cautious like that. But Raya in goal with Gabriel, both away at Fulham. We think Gabriel starts, but if he doesn't, then Hall will come on. Porro at home to Chelsea. Lewis away at Crystal Palace. Happy enough with that. I don't think there's tons of clean sheets there, but I'm happy enough with that. In the midfield, I've got Palmer and Saka. Salah is benched. I could be a little bit cheeky and put him in my starting 11, but because I'm on stream, because I want to show you my authentic 11, I've put him on my bench. But I'm actually one of maybe the lucky few that has not benefited from the Liverpool game being off, but I'm okay because I've now got no benching dilemma. I can start all of my other front seven, that being Semenyo away at Ipswich, Rodgers at home to Southampton, Jackson away at Spurs, who's just had his rest, João Pedro against Leicester, Solanke at home to Chelsea. Overall, I don't think it's too bad. And yes, I'm rolling my transfer. So I'll have 2 free transfers next week. I think it's okay. Let me know in the chat if you think it's an okay side for a green arrow this week. Fingers crossed. One more question in the chat as well from Hugo Buendia. Wood to start, or should you play with 4 in defence? Who is your 4th defender? Who would you be starting instead of Wood would be my question. But I don't hate Wood as a starter this week against Man United. He's on penalties, I believe, now. He's getting decent minutes. The data's not bad. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to just be starting Wood. So it depends who your 4th defender is. But I think I'd probably start Wood. So a few other people. I'm not seeing any early team news here. Usually I'll be watching another stream to wait for team news. So now I'm the streamer. I kind of need to find the early team news, don't I? And I've not really seen any. It seems like a lot of panic on Twitter all of a sudden, but I don't see what for. Anyone in the chat know if there's anything crazy happening? I'm not really seeing anything. So hopefully we're okay. 5 minutes to the deadline, by the way, just over. Looks like the game week is going to lock in at 11 as normal. So plenty of hours before we get any sort of reliable team news. No news from Objectives, Matt. Thank you very much for going and scouting that out for me. Seems like we're basically going off of nothing in the last few minutes, which is interesting. It's certainly weird for me as a first-time streamer, so yeah, fingers crossed I'm doing an okay job. But last couple of questions before we lock in. Last chance to donate as well before I finish up the stream. So PLK in the chat, another option is Mbermo to Semenyo. Then there's enough cash for both Isak and Jackson for a -4. But I don't feel good about selling Cunha. I wouldn't sell Cunha this week. I like the fixture and I like his next 3 as well. He's been frustrating recently, but I wouldn't sell him. Certainly not for a hit. But if what you could do is Mbermo to Semenyo and then do the other move that you mentioned. So bring in Jackson. I don't know if you could do Isak, but not take the hit for Cunha. And then you can do that for free next week, potentially. I don't mind that at all, because that also frees up the extra money to make that future move down the line too, and then getting to the other one of Isak or Jackson, whichever one you don't buy this week. Okay, so a couple last questions in the chat. Hugo says, I've got Gabriel, Gvardiol, Mazraoui, Aitnuri, Porro. So it's starting one of them. I think I'd start Mazraoui personally. And then you might get Aitnuri or Porro off the bench for Gabriel. You might, but I think I'd probably just about start Mazraoui. Aitnuri's upside's good, but away from home, not. Wolves have been defensively very poor recently, so I think they concede. And Porro, whilst I'm starting him, and I think he's okay, I'm basically just hoping on an attacking return, because I don't think he keeps a clean sheet against Chelsea. Whereas with Man United at home to Forest, I think there is maybe a little bit of a better chance. So I'd probably just about go with Mazraoui. Brandon asks, how do auto subs work for blanks? So if the player isn't playing, so Salah, for instance, you can have him in your starting 11 and you will get another midfielder or striker, your 8th attacker, coming off the bench for them. If you're already, basically, if you've got 2 what's the best way of describing this? Any player that has a blank in your team will swap out for whoever's on your bench that is eligible to play. So if you've got 3 defenders and one of them blanks, you will get your next defender because you have to have a minimum of 3 defenders in your starting 11. In your forward line and your midfielders, it's a little bit more simple. If Salah's blanking, which he is, of course, then your 8th midfielder or striker will come in. Your benched midfielder striker comes in for the player that blanks. And then if you've got a second Liverpool or Everton player blanking this week in your midfielder striker, then it would go to like a defender, for instance. That's, of course, dependent on bench order. You would have to have the first bench to come on. So number 1 is always first as long as it's eligible to do so. So in my team, let's say I had Salah here, for instance, but I had Lewis Hall there, then Lewis Hall would come in for Salah first, and it would become a 4-3-3. Make sense? I think so. So now I've really screwed around with my team there, so hopefully that's fine. That looks fine, right? I haven't messed that up too much. Considering I've got 3 minutes before the deadline, that was probably quite silly of me to do. But hopefully that makes sense. So not to worry. If you've got Salah in your starting 11, he'll come out for whoever's first on your bench. And then if you've got a defender who doesn't play in your starting 11, it'll come on for your next defender if you've only got 3 starting defenders. That's basically it. Okay, so wrapping up, we've got 3 minutes left, so get your teams locked in. Mine certainly is locked in now. I keep reloading to make sure, just because I'm very paranoid. But I am locked in. So last couple of questions. I don't know if I'll be able to answer them before the deadline now, so apologies. Jackson and Matoma in for Jackson and... I don't know if that makes sense. Sorry, Matty, I'm not sure I understand the question there. Hugo says thank you. Razor says good luck, everyone. Good luck to you. Good luck to everyone watching this. Thank you so much if you are watching this, by the way. Brandon says I'm starting Salah and Trent for banters. Then yeah, fair play. Absolutely not a problem there. Johnson to Mitoma or Semenyo. I would probably go Mitoma, just about. Objective. Sorry, I'm going through these really quick. It's only because we got 2 minutes. Yeah, I'd probably go... So Bob from Marketing asks Johnson to Mitoma or Semenyo. I'd probably go Mitoma. Very marginally. That might be because I've already got Semenyo, but I do like Mitoma at the moment. They've got great fixtures, and he looks like a proper player right now. Starting yesterday's news: Foden, Ake, Stones out, Gabriel chance to play, Alisson near return, Senesi out for Bournemouth, late call on Welbeck and Veltman, Anderson still out for Fulham, Davies out for Ipswich. Really well done, Matt. That's really helpful. Super good to have that in the chat with 1 minute to go. Matty said Wood, sorry, not Jackson. So Jackson, Mitoma. Okay, so Wood and hang on, what? Wood, sorry, not Jackson. Mitoma and Jackson in for Bruno. What? I'm sorry, I'm really confused. It's so Wood out for Jackson and Mitoma in for Bruno. No, probably not. Probably not. Because in a couple of weeks, you're still going to want Bruno, I think. It's close. It's close. And you've got 1 minute, so I'll let you... I don't really have a locked-in answer on that, to be honest. If it's for free, possibly. Depends if you still want Bruno in game week 17 or not, I think. You know what? If it's for free, maybe. Yeah, maybe for free. Definitely not for a hit. But very close. But anyway, we are pretty much locked in with 5 seconds to go. So hopefully that's it. We don't have any news, no deadline news. We're locked in on my first ever deadline stream. So thank you so much for watching. Massive good luck to you all. I've really enjoyed this. I'll hopefully be doing this a lot more often. Every single penny that I've made today has gone to, or will go to Mind, the mental health charity. So thank you so much if you did donate. That was really kind of you in the super chat, or if you just watched along live, because all of the ad revenue will also go to Mind as well. So again, thank you so much. Hopefully The arrows will be green ahead of game week 15. I will, of course, be back. I'll be filming another video tomorrow, maybe a little bit hungover because I'm going out having a party tonight. So we'll see how I feel. But I will definitely do the video regardless. And yeah, I look forward to talking to you guys again really soon in the comments, during the videos during the week, but hopefully on another deadline stream in the next couple of weeks. It's a really busy fixture period, so we'll see how many deadline streams I can get involved in. But yeah, I've really enjoyed it, so yeah, hopefully a lot more, and hopefully you've enjoyed it too. Thank you so much for staying along for the ride if you have done so. It's kept me company, otherwise I'd be talking into the wind, quite literally today, of course. But I'm gonna probably head off now because I don't know whether my garden gate has blown over, and if it has, then I need to go and fix that before I go get my haircut. But we're locked in. Good luck in game week 15. Thank you all so much yet again for watching. And yeah, may the arrows be green, and I'll see you on the other side on when we start talking about game week 16 on Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, moving into Monday. But yeah, thank you so much again, and I'll see you